The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
I'm going to go look for the clippers, and I found them within like a minute, which that never happens in my household. And I thought maybe it was a sign. And so I did it. I shaved. You can't even tell, right? But I shaved the back of my head. I'm going to turn around. It looks like a crazy person did it. Can you see? Because I can't see back there. It looks pretty bad and it's pretty uneven. And I woke my husband up and I said, I did something. I did something probably stupid. And of course, this is how you tell if you're married to the right person. He was like, "Oh, honey, what?" And I said, "I shaved the back of my head." Shot straight up in bed. And he was like, "You did what?" I said, "I did. I shaved the back of my head." So then my son came down this morning just as we were getting ready. And I showed him, come here. All
right, so the physician's on the phone.
Come down here and say hi to everybody. Hi. So this is my son. Yeah. And I said, "Honey, look what I did to the back of my head." And of course, look, from the front, you really can't tell, which is the brilliance of this. And he looked at the back of my head and what did you say?
I think I need a physician.
Yeah, he said, "I'm going to need lots of physicians' help." I think he said psychiatric help.
Psychiatric help, that's what I did say.
That's what you said, psychiatric help. So bend down and say hi to everybody. And then we got to get on with the show.
Okay.
Okay.
Anyway, I'll leave you.
You've got class. Go be, because he's got online class. So anyway, there it is. And I'll tell you something. I had cut my hair the other day just a little bit because, my hair gets a little crazy. And now I've shaved the back of the head. And I think I'm going to shave more of it off, maybe a little bit every day. So that by the time we get out of being sequestered, I'll have one little curl at the front. Won't that be funny? All right. Well, all kidding aside, we've got a big show for you here, and I'm really excited to be here. We are coming to you live, as I said, from my house, because we live in interesting times, my friend, and we're going to keep on doing this as long as I have an internet connection or can drive to an internet. Maybe we'll do it from my car one day. That would be hilarious. But we're going to be here because we're going to get through this together. I always say, if we just all hold hands, yes, we're doing it virtually. We always did it virtually, right? Virtually hold hands and we get through this together. Si se puede. We can do this. We're going to keep on giving you great, great information here. And at the start of the show, I put up the graphic because I'm the person doing this for the moment. We're looking at new ways of doing this. We just don't have it up and running yet. But here are some of the ways that you can connect with us. We are live right now on Twitter, on Facebook, on Periscope, on YouTube. You can catch us in podcasts on iTunes, on Spotify, on iHeartRadio, and Deezer. Still haven't figured out what that is, but we are there. And we've got a big, big show for you today. I've got two guests who are going to be joining us, and we're going to have a little bit of fun here as well. Because if you're not having fun, what are you doing, right? That's what my dad always said. So I hope that you will be here and that you will write in your questions and your comments. I don't want you to forget that our homepage is autism-live.com. When you go there, our entire library of videos, over 8 years of videos that we have done is there. You can see them all. You can stop them. You can rewind. You can search for other things. It's all free. You can hear my dog barking in the background. And I'll bet that the big stars don't have to do this. The dog in the other room. But in any case, it's real, right? I hope that you will find resources for you during this time in the library of videos that we've done. But we're going to continue doing live shows, and we're thrilled asking you guys to tell us, what do you really need to know about? One of the things that I'm super excited about is on tomorrow's show. For those of you who are dealing with challenging behavior, I've got two of the best experts for you. I have Art Wilke, who is the Assaultive Behavior Management Director at CARD, and I have Dr. Sienna Greener-Wooten. They're going to be coming here to talk with you about extreme challenging behavior. If your kids are hitting, kicking, you don't want to miss that show tomorrow. Big show tomorrow. And then great things for the rest of the week. We'll talk about those. But I hope you'll join us here and participate and find what helps you to get through this. And if you don't see it, shout out, right? There's a chat at the bottom of the page on our homepage, autism-live.com. It's free. It's anonymous. You can shout out to me now. You can shout out anytime during the day or night. We'll be checking in daily to see what those things are. Send me story ideas of things that would help you. I'm very interested in doing that. Okay, so we are going to be live this entire hour interacting with you and with our guests. But there are a couple of things that we normally start the show with. And one of our bits of advice that we've been giving you is keep the routine as normal as possible. So our routine on Mondays, first I tell you that the disclaimer that we have guests and experts on the show, but I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert in the field of autism. Clearly, I'm not an expert at cutting hair, right? So I'm not even an expert in my own kid, let's say that. But I care very much about the journey that you're on. I want to help you. We serve the larger autism community here. That, of course, starts with individuals who are themselves on the autism spectrum, but it also extends out to everybody who cares about them, who is fighting to get them the resources and the respect and the employment, right? And the compensation that those individuals so richly deserve. So I hope that you will join me here to get what you can, speak loudly so that we know what else we're not getting for you yet, because we'll find a way. If at all possible, we'll find a way to bring it here. All right. Having said that, we like to do something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. Now, today's jargon is a term that we use a lot here on the show. And believe me, this is a term that is very much in play today in so many people's homes. It's FAPE. Now, I don't know about you, but my first day of autism, I had no idea what that was. Didn't know what it meant. We're going to give you first the actual definition, and then we're going to give you a working definition to help you to understand why this is something that we would be talking about. So our actual definition of FAPE, FAPE stands for free, appropriate public education. It's a term frequently referred to in IEPs. And that's, for any of you who are watching who have a kiddo who has an IEP stands for an individualized education plan or program, depends on the state that you're in. So great, as a parent of an individual on the spectrum, your kiddo probably has an IEP, and it entitles you to that free, appropriate public education. And spoiler alert, it's the appropriate that's always the sticking point, right? Because we know what free means. We know what public means, and we think we know what education means, right? So it's the appropriate that's always left up to interpretation. Let me give you the working definition here. FAPE is what your child is legally entitled to in the United States in terms of education. Now, here's the really interesting, and this is why we're talking about this today, is that FAPE does not change when there is a stay put. Let's not use that term because that means something different. When we shelter in place, or here in California, when we have been asked to be safe at home, your child's rights don't go away, at least not today. There is some new legislation that is being discussed right now that has the potential to make that go away. But in this moment in time, unless it's been signed already, and I don't know, minute by minute, right? Your child has the right to a free, appropriate public education. And we're going to have special education attorney Bonnie Yates with us in just a little while, talking about what it does mean, what the school does have to do when your special education student is forced to go home, just like everybody else, and get that online instruction. What are you entitled to? And I think you're all going to be amazed when you hear how much you are entitled to. So, but that free appropriate public education is what we're all talking about, right? Okay, so moving on, we always have a question for you. Let's see if I can find the right one here. Is it the question? Yes, it is. Our question today is, what has made you laugh this week? Everybody take a breath, right? Because if you're not laughing, I mean, this is very serious business. Let's not kid ourselves, right? There's a lot that's going on in the world that we need to be very, very serious and diligent about. But you can be very serious and still find time to laugh and enjoy something that's funny. I was on a meeting the other day with a lot of professionals, and we were waiting to start the meeting. We had like 30 seconds to start the meeting. And I don't remember who it was, but there was just like this uncomfortable quiet in this Zoom room, you know? And someone said, well, I guess, you know, it's time for knock-knock jokes. So one by one, people started going around and telling ridiculous little kid knock-knock jokes. And this is a bunch of doctors and professionals. And as it went on, everybody kind of got the tee-hees. And it was, I felt, the break that we all needed, right? But I have to tell you that this morning, even after I had written this, my ritual is that I wake up in the morning and I go through a whole bunch of things on Facebook, and I go through some of my emails from bed. I know it's not the right thing to do, but I like to just get a beat on what's happening in the day. And somebody had posted something on Facebook and said, well, this is the laugh that we all need today. And I thought, oh, this is perfect for today. And it was a bunch of those autocorrects for your phone. Oh my gosh. And there are so many of them, but I started to laugh so loud that I woke my husband up. He thought that I was having a nightmare because I was trying so hard not to laugh. And then I just laid there and giggled. And you know what? It started me off in the right space for today. So I urge you, when you're doing your family fun, or as my friend Cecilia likes to call it, forced family fun every day. And I hope that you are. I hope that you're finding an opportunity every day to do that family fun. Maybe it's time to be silly. Maybe it's time to tell some jokes. You know, do what you have to do, because it's important to laugh, y'all. Even me doing this, changing the slides, because this is more technologically than I know what to do. But we always have a topic of the week. And our topic of the week, of course, goes right along with everything that we're talking about here, keeping the wheels on. Look, I don't know how long this is going to last. And every day we hear a little bit different story about how long it might last. And, you know, when we started this, everybody thought it was going to be a week, 2 weeks, maybe 3, maybe 3.5 weeks. I don't think anybody thought it was going to be a month. But now people are talking about the fact that it easily could be. So we need to take on some strategies. And okay, mine was to shave the back of my head. And I know that's not going to be everybody's strategy, but I think the point here is that it isn't one size fits all. You got to look at your house. You got to look at your life. You got to take some stock and say, what do I have in my plus column? What do I have working against me? How can I mitigate that? What do I need to do to make this work long term? And that might mean rearranging the furniture in your house. That might mean, I'm just going to go through some of the things that I've had to do so far. And that's that I took a room in the house where typically my dog hangs out, and I had to rearrange it to make a makeshift studio. And it's makeshift. I mean, you guys are looking at it. It's makeshift, right? But I also had to make it work in a way so that, you know, it's like a thoroughfare in my house. So I had to make it work for that. We've had to rearrange a little bit of furniture, and I encourage you to do what you have to do. We have had to rearrange things so that we have a place to exercise. And I think that that is super important for all of us, because we're, especially those of us who have kiddos at home, we have to model that behavior. And, you know, we need to be doing this for ourselves. The reality is that a day is going to come when this is going to be over. It will. We've seen this again and again and again in history. There will come a time when this is over. And when it's over, we want to be in a better place than we are today, not a worse place, right? We want to be healthier. And this is an opportunity for all of us, myself included, who have been saying for the longest time, I don't have time to work out. I'm so busy. I don't have time to work out. Well, all of our commute time has been given back to us, right? And for some people, even more time on top of that. So we do have time to work out. You got to make the space for it. Make your space work and then work the space. We have to keep the wheels on. I say this to my husband like 3 and 4 times a day that, if you have machines, you got to run them, like the dishwasher and the washing machine and the vacuum cleaner. Run those machines, run them on a regular basis. Try to get everything back to some sort of a start point, if not every day, every other day, or at least once a week, where it's like, okay, the wheels, because if we let it go, it goes south. You've already seen this. I know, I have too. It's like, oh, today we're not going to worry about picking up as much today. And then you go, how did this get so out of control so fast? So keeping the wheels on, what does that mean for you? Because it's going to be different for everybody. For me, in the summer, I usually cut my hair really short. And a lot of times though, I don't think they've ever buzzed it quite like I buzzed the back of my head, but I've come close a couple of times. But it's just easier to manage, right? And if I'm going to be getting up every morning, working out and being here with you on the show, I get a Brillo pad in the back. So I was like, you know what? I got to simplify. I got to make things easier. So what do you need to do? Probably nothing as drastic as shaving the back of your head, but what do you need to do? Do you need to move a piece of furniture one place or the other? Do you need to clean out a cabinet? Do you need to make room for your office supplies? What do you need to do? And I'm giving you permission, not that you needed it, but giving you permission to make that happen. We know that this is not going to be over on Thursday. So rearrange, keep the wheels on, and we forge ahead, right? Okay, so we've got a big show for you today. Tremendous guests. We're going to start the show off today with the amazing Bonnie Yates. She's a special education attorney. She's going to be talking with us today about what our kiddos' rights are. And then we've got, for the first time on the show, Dr. Theresa Lyons. She's an international autism educator and an Ivy League scientist. She is going to be with us to tell us a little bit about her story. And we're going to talk a little bit about a new book that she has coming out. It's called The Lyons Report 2020, Autism and Functional Medicine Doctors. Ooh, now I've got your attention, right? So if you don't know what functional medicine is, you're going to want to make sure that you tune in to see Dr. Theresa Lyons and hear what she has to say. But I want to remind you, I'm going to get Bonnie on the phone, and we're not going to commercials. We're commercial free now. I know some of you have been asking for that, and your wish is my command. We're going to get Bonnie on the phone. And while I'm doing that, I want you guys to take a look at, again, all the different ways that you can connect with us. And I, of course, am not able to do 2 things at the same time. I can't walk, talk, and chew gum. And I need to take a drink. And we're calling Bonnie right now. Bonnie.
Hi, Shannon.
Hey, you're live on Autism Live. How are you?
I'm good. Should I get on Skype?
Actually, no. We're just going to be on the phone today, and I have a lovely graphic of you that I'm going to put up here.
Okay.
And Bonnie, we're super, because I'm doing this from home today. By next week, we should have a really wonderful way to be able to, wait, I've got a picture of you here. I'm going to get it. It's going to happen. There it is. By next week, we should have a picture of you. We're working on it, and we just don't have it quite where we needed it this morning.
Okay.
But Bonnie, thrilled that you're here. You are a special education attorney. And tell us a little bit about Tollner Law Firm that you work with.
Okay, well, here's something about Tollner Law Firm. I don't usually give our phone number on the show, so let me give that. It's 408-286-3081, and the website is www.specialeducationcouncil.com. I think the thing I want to tell people is that we are a law firm based in Northern and Southern California, and we are very much at work. We are not stopping our ordinary activities because of this health crisis, because we feel that we can accomplish quite a lot by telephone and via email and via Zoom. So what I want to tell you generally, and then I'll give the disclaimer for specific cases, is I think there's two piles. The pile used to be like the people that sort of had access to justice because they understood what their legal rights were and they worked with attorneys and advocates, and the people just who didn't know better than to just sort of take what they were told at face value. I'm finding that even though the districts are writing and saying things may not occur on the date that they were planned for, like IEP meetings or releases of records or mediation dates, whatever it is, that if you take the position that you're not waiving any legal right that you have under the IDEA, the federal statute, or California state law, that you're not waiving any statutory right, and you're still going to press to have your IEP meeting occur, or your records be released, or your mediation scheduled, that the districts are taking a more serious look at those cases. And we are anticipating a very large backlog in the spring or whenever it is that the districts are able to operate more normally again. And we're really suggesting that you do the things that you can do to make sure that your requests for your child get acknowledged and get acted upon. So as far as my personal attorney disclaimer goes, we're going to be talking today about a subject that I think is of great general interest, but if you have a specific question about your specific case, I would urge you to get specific legal advice from an attorney. And we tell you all the time that you can go to COPA.net, COPAA.net, and you can have access to attorneys in the 50 states that are affiliated with that group. If you're in California and you need help, our office is available to help you in Northern or Southern California, so you can give us a call or you can fill in the form on the website. Anyway, what we were supposed to be talking about today was Andrew F. So, Shannon, are you still there?
I am very much still here.
Okay. Okay, so before we talk about Andrew F., here's what I want to say. IDEA is a federal program. California has its own set of laws that it developed to participate. California guidance that we've gotten so far is that the guidelines are relaxed as far as the timing of assessments, IEPs, and so on. But as I said, the IDEA hasn't been changed in any way. And so we're continuing to tell people that on their behalf, we're going to press forward so that we can address their issues as they come up. We're also trying to come up with a plan for what people can do to get substitute services if their school districts are not able to provide some of the services that they had at school. I'll be telling you more about that. I'll either send Shannon some emails this week or next week. We can talk about it on the show. But here in California, we're definitely looking to Regional Center to come in and help us with kids that are at home for the foreseeable future with no intervention. So just know that's something we're working on, but we're not there yet.
But Bonnie, if I can ask a question in a general nature, the question that everybody has been asking is what are, even in this relaxed, I mean, we all want to be, what's the word that I want? We all
proactive.
Well, we want to be aware of the fact, we don't want to be idiots, right? We get it that something is happening that nobody's ever written the rule book for before. And we all want to be cognizant of the fact that our schools have challenges, but that doesn't change the fact that our kiddos need a free, appropriate public education. And so what should, if somebody is home with their child and they're told this is what we have, which is the online learning, which is one size fits all, what's the first step for them? Do they go on COPA and find an attorney, or do they just call the school and say, you're going to have to help me here? I do still have rights. My child still has rights. What do you think the first step is?
Well, I think those are good steps, and I think the thing to know is that the districts have been given a lot of discretion. I don't know that every district is going to elect to just stop and not do anything, because if they do that, they're going to really, really be treading water when everything gets, restarted again. I think you have to press them and say that you understand that this is discretionary on their part, but that they need to use their discretion in favor of erring on the side of providing services for this child, because this child will regress promptly. And I think that's the best you can do, is bug them. Okay. Ask them what they're doing. Ask them when you can expect to hear back from them. Ask them what other options are being used instead. And so I think, the real problem is if distance learning doesn't work for people right now, we may be kind of stuck.
Yeah, well, and, it may be that distance learning might have worked if there was an aide there to help. And there's, it's in the IEP that there's an aide, but school is like, we can't send the aide to your house. So I think a lot of people feel up a tree right now, but it's definitely something they should have a conversation about, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
And you just say, hey, listen, this is my particular child's particular circumstances. Yeah. What can you help?
There we go.
What can you help me do? So Andrew F. actually bookends rather nicely with this discussion. People have heard about Andrew F. probably from time to time on the program and in life. We're going to dissect it a little bit today. And then, if you guys do have specific questions, or if you're really concerned and you need help this week, I would tell you, call Tollner Law Offices. We've got 8 attorneys. We're concerned about what's happening with your family. Let us know, and, we want to find a way to help. So,
but Bonnie, remind us just what the context, why is Andrew F. important to us?
Okay. Andrew EWF is important to us because it revisited the standard for what constitutes a free, appropriate public education. And that was a standard that was articulated in Rowley. So the Rowley Board of Education versus Rowley was decided in 1982. Okay, so 35 plus years ago, Rowley basically said the IEP must be reasonably calculated to enable a child to receive educational benefit. And we have been trying to figure out ever since what that meant. So this case, which was decided by the Supreme Court in March of 2017, purported to revisit that standard. Now, there's some stuff I want to say about this that's important for people to understand. Amy Rowley was a public school student who had normal cognition and was hard of hearing. So she needed to have accommodations in her classroom so that she could be in general ed and access the curriculum. So Amy Rowley was somebody who, relative to some students, could do very well in a general ed setting, and if she had the right supports, she could get passing grades and advance from year to year like all other children or most other children in a general ed setting. So in Rowley, at the time that it was decided in 1982, she wanted to have a speech and language interpreter signing for her in the classroom, and the question was whether or not she needed that. And that's the context in which the standard was decided. And as you could see, it was a reasonableness standard. The IEP had to be reasonably calculated to enable the child to receive educational benefit. It wasn't a so-called equal opportunity or maximization standard. And so to some extent, the plaintiff that was setting the standard for what the idea must provide was a very high-functioning person. And so you get into questions about how that standard should be applied in the case of a person with autism like Andrew F. So Andrew F. was a fourth grader, I believe, at the time of the at the time that the matter arose, and who had a diagnosis of autism. One of the things about Rowley was you can see it's a pretty amorphous standard, and you can see how I could argue it one way and a school district could argue it another way. And so the court in Rowley did not give a specific test. So Andrew F. was a fourth grader, and until fourth grade, he'd made decent progress in school, but his progress stalled in fourth grade. And for fifth grade, the district proposed a similar IEP to the one that had not produced progress in fourth grade. And one of the things about his IEP was that the district proposed incorporating all of the same old goals for fifth grade that hadn't really got him to move for fourth grade. So the parents removed him to a private school, and in that context, he made significant progress. So one of the things I want to say that's important, although it's a slightly different topic, is you have to show that you aren't making progress in public school, that the public school program is not appropriate. It's not enough to go to a different school and say, I'm doing well here. You have to show that you were being denied a FAPE. In other words, your IEP wasn't reasonably calculated to enable the child to receive educational benefit, which was the old standard. And you have to show that in the private program you made better progress. So the 10th Circuit, which is not California, was the circuit that got involved in this case. Parents removed him. They sought private tuition reimbursement. They lost at the administrative level. It went to the 10th Circuit, and the 10th Circuit affirmed the decision, saying Rowley holds that the child's IEP is adequate as long as it is calculated to confer an educational benefit that is merely more than de minimis progress. So in conclusion, they said Andrew's IEP had been reasonably calculated to enable him to make some progress, and that was good enough. Now, it's no coincidence that this case was being decided by a circuit that has a less favorable standard. This was a Texas case, and so the holding was to meet its substantive obligation under the IDEA, a school district must offer an IEP that's reasonably calculated to enable a child to make progress appropriate to, in light of the child's circumstances. I'm sorry, what I should have said is the 10th Circuit decided the case, and then because there was a conflict between the 10th Circuit and other circuits, that's a situation in which the Supreme Court may exercise its jurisdiction because it wants some of its functions as a court include making sure that there's not a conflict between circuits, which would result in an unfair, disparity in standards. So the Supreme Court revisited what the 10th Circuit had done, and they issued this decision. And for the first time, we have this language that the IEP must be reasonably calculated to enable a child to make progress appropriate in light of the child's circumstances. So I'm going to stop talking for a second, see if you have any questions, Shannon.
Well, thank you, because I do, of course. So this is the thing that we've been talking about on the show for a year and a half, 2 years now, is this whole idea of what is de minimis. And, you know, it's like we keep moving the goalpost a little bit further away, but it still seems a little squishy to me, Bonnie. Is it? Because now
it's very squishy.
Now an educational benefit appropriate for the child. I mean, that's better than de minimis. We no longer, because it really looked like, especially, I'm just going to call it out, we have a Secretary of Education right now who has demonstrated that maybe special education is not her thing. And so, you know, having that de minimis decision was really helpful, I think. But are we that much further, is my question, in saying that it's got to be an educational benefit appropriate to the child? Because that still feels like we're in that appropriate conversation. Nobody's really defined it, right?
Well, what parents wanted was something that said that the districts had to maximize, they call it equal opportunity, but I think it means maximize, you know, that you should do everything you possibly can that would give the child the opportunity to make progress in light of their particular circumstances. I think what's happened is in every single case you have to go through and you have to argue about why it is that what the district is offering is only de minimis and it is not appropriately ambitious. I'm going to send you an article that a colleague of mine wrote, Julie Waterstone. She's at USC Law School. And her article is entitled Symbolism versus Reality. We're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but that's okay. I don't mind going out of order. We can come back to some of the other discussion. But she says, given that the holding of Andrew F. states that the educational program must be appropriately ambitious in light of the child's circumstances, perhaps the best tool that parents can use at an IEP meeting to achieve the needed program or services is heavy reliance on the particular circumstances of the child. This means that parents need to be prepared to demonstrate how the child's needs warrant whatever they are seeking. Parents need to be well-versed in the facts of the child's disability, facts of the program or service, and facts of how the child will benefit from that program or service. Parents need to be well-versed in their disability, including how the needs present in their child, perhaps even getting a pediatrician or general practitioner to weigh in if necessary. Well, I don't know why she said that. I would have said an educational expert, but I think the idea is the same. And parents should be armed with the great language contained in the opinion, which repeatedly highlights the need to focus on the individual. The court plainly states, for example, that this standard is a general standard, not a formula. The court further acknowledged that it will not attempt to elaborate on what appropriate progress will look like from case to case. The language in the opinion will also be important to highlight the significance of parental voice and involvement, which is something that the court talked about in Andrew F. While the court certainly talked about deference being accorded to school district personnel, the court unequivocally discussed the importance of the IEP process as being collaborative. Parents should utilize both the language in the IDEA and Andrew F. to ensure that they are heard. If parents are being told that the school district makes the final decision, parents need to ensure that the school district has provided a cogent and responsive explanation for its decision, which is prior written notice, essentially. If parents are not satisfied with the response, they always have the option to pursue due process. One more thing, she says, Whether this decision will be a game changer or business as usual may depend upon your view of the previous standard. Undoubtedly, those residing in the 10th Circuit will certainly feel its impact, because the 10th Circuit was a conservative circuit and they were arguing for a low standard. Regardless of the jurisdiction in which a child resides, the hope post-Andrew is that in every IEP meeting, the team will be more thoughtful about designing a program that is truly appropriate given the child's individual unique circumstances. Perhaps most significant is that the guidance cannot be construed just for children who can be mainstreamed, but for all children across the spectrum, regardless of how severe their needs may be.
Okay.
So
it's a lot. But what I clearly hear is that really we have to be more vigilant than ever, because we have the potential to be able to argue things. But what I clearly heard was parents need to have their ducks in a row. You need to be able to go in and argue what your child's disability is, and the fact that they, even though they have the disability, that they can make progress.
Yes. Well, parents have always needed to have their ducks in a row.
Yeah.
So that's nothing new, because parents have the burden of proof, and you're essentially trying to convince the district that the status quo isn't appropriate. Yeah. The thing about Andrew F. is that it does say, that for children that are mainstreamed and are capable of making progress more or less like their typical peers, that the standard would be annual achievement matriculating from grade to grade. For students like Andrew F., whose disability is more limiting, the court essentially said reasonably calculated means a recognition that crafting an appropriate program of education requires a prospective judgment by school officials informed by their own expertise and views of parents. Any review of an IEP must appreciate the question is whether the IEP is reasonable, not whether courts regard it as ideal. An IEP must aim to enable a child to make progress. The essential function of an IEP is to set out a plan for pursuing academic and functional advancement. And the degree of progress contemplated by the IEP must be appropriate in light of the child's circumstances. So you need to read Rowley and Andrew F., which I will supply you with, and you need to start arguing at your IEP that Andrew F. did result in a change in expectation, and you need to be prepared to show why the district's proposed program is not reasonably calculated for the child to make progress appropriate to the child's unique circumstances. In terms of what we do with this, Shannon, we start talking about it. We go into our IEP meeting and say, you're not offering a program that's appropriately ambitious in line with Andrew F. And that then becomes your issue on appeal.
There's our argument.
So,
unfortunately, Bonnie, that's all we have time for today, because we're live and we're on a tight schedule. But can we pick this up next week?
Yes.
Okay, and then as more information becomes available about what parents are doing and what school districts are doing, we're really going to be looking to you to help us through this difficult time.
Yeah, and I understand that, and I will do all that I can.
Thank you so much. And Bonnie, let's leave you by telling us a little bit about how we can get a hold of you and Tollner Law offices.
If you have a pressing question and you want to talk to an attorney, why don't you give me a call, 310-245-1968. I want to try to help people out. This is a tough time.
Yeah. But Bonnie, that's really for only people in Southern California, or?
It's for it's Northern and Southern California. And if you're outside the state, go to COPA. I'll provide you actually with a COPA person, email address for a COPA person that people can reach out to.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you so much, Bonnie, for being with us.
No problem, Shannon. Talk to you next week.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye. So our next, and we have to just buzz on ahead because we're running a little bit behind, but our next guest is Dr. Theresa Lyons. She is so many things, just a whirlwind here. She's an international autism educator, and she is also an Ivy League scientist. She is the author of the new book, The Lyons Report 2020. The subtitle is Autism and Functional Medicine. So I'm going to remind you guys of the ways that you can get in contact with us while I get her on the phone. And I'm going to keep the mic hot here, which is a bad idea, but we're going to do it anyway. Because I'm all about the bad ideas today. Have you noticed that? But look at all the ways you can get in touch with us, that you can pose a question. I know that we've got some questions that people have written in, and I'm going to try to get to those. In fact, we might have to stay a little bit late. But while I am getting Dr. Lyons on the phone, I want to read some of those to you. Want to say hello. Hi, is this Dr. Lyons?
Yes, this is Dr. Lyons.
We're live with you. This is Shannon Penrod. You're live on Autism Live.
Hi, Shannon. Hello, everyone.
Hello. And so hang on a second here, and I'm going to get us back to a place where we can be. But Dr. Lyons, I was just telling them that your credentials, you're an international autism educator and an Ivy League scientist, and you are the author of a new book, The Lyons Report 2020, Autism and Functional Medicine Doctors. So I want to start, first of all, welcome to the show, but I want to start and have you talk with us a little bit about why autism is of such interest to you.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me on the show. And this will answer that question and tell you a little bit more. I watch Autism Live, and I did so a lot when my daughter was first diagnosed with autism. So it's very surreal to be on this program that I used to watch.
How exciting to have you here. What a lovely, lovely thing. And so you referenced that your daughter was diagnosed. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So my daughter was diagnosed when she was 3.5 years old. I do have a PhD in chemistry from Yale University. I worked in healthcare. So kind of from the beginning of her development, there was this intuition, that something wasn't just right. And she was developing in certain areas, but not in others. And, people and different doctors and other parents told me, every child is different. But, it's that gut feeling that something just wasn't right.
And so I'm curious for you and all the things that we all have that beginning, that kickoff of when our child is diagnosed and the first steps that we take. But I'm terribly interested to know what your first steps are. I'm wondering if they're similar to the rest of us.
Sure. Well, they're similar in the sense of information is the best way to start. It's just that I have academic credentials, so all of those research articles that cost $80 to look at for each one, I can and did look at all of them. So I still had my academic credentials. So my information gathering is just a bit different than most parents. So I would also then reach out to the different scientists who published the publications, and we would talk in a very scientific way. So I left that role of being a mom aside when I was interacting with researchers, with doctors. So when I would have an appointment with a doctor, I went in there as Dr. Lyons, not as, mom. And it just allowed me to access different information that many people wouldn't have because it takes so long for information to trickle down. So that's really how my first steps are different, just because of my academic background and the fact that I worked in healthcare. I worked in healthcare both in R&D as also as a strategist.
Well, I'm wondering, though, I think so many of us as moms go in to have a conversation with a doctor. Even for me, interviewing people in terms of this show, I feel like often there is this, stigma, I don't know, where if I'm the mom, then the automatic presumption is that I may not know what I'm talking about, and that that I'm not educated about the things that perhaps I am educated about. Did you find that not only, going in and speaking as a doctor and leaving the mom thing behind, did you feel like people listened to you a little bit more?
Well,
or were they just freer to answer your questions?
No, so I mean, I would prepare an agenda. I would send it to them the day before. This is all things that I do with my clients now. But so the doctors knew that I was coming. So I never surprised a doctor with a difficult question. Mm-hmm. I always gave them time to really think about it, so that when they had that appointment with us, they brought their best thoughts, their best ideas. So many times parents are more well-read on a certain subject, especially if you're going to see a general pediatrician. It's really hard for a general pediatrician to stay up to date on all of the different therapeutic areas that their patients are involved in. So when it comes to asking those really important questions that you feel like you almost know more than the doctor, give the doctor time to even then research it themselves, so that they can prepare a really good answer for you. That's what I found works the best, regardless of my background or not.
Well, that's great advice. But I think what everybody is probably wanting to know, and what I want to know, is, so you were in all these places, you did all this research. What'd you find out? And how does this go along with, because your book, it's about functional medicine doctors. So I'm presuming you found something out about functional medicine.
Yes, for sure. So there is this, especially a few years ago, there was this whispering. Now it's much louder, but there was this whispering of, your child doesn't have to have symptoms all throughout your life, and they can get better. And, I would read a book or two from parents who had completely healed their children, and their children are entirely different and able to have careers and friends and everything we want our children to do. So it really became, how did they get that? And how can I get that? And that's where that blending of quality information as well as partnerships came together. And functional medicine is something that was very common in children who had that great turnaround, where things were much different for them. So I started understanding what functional medicine was, who are the good practitioners, where are these practitioners learning, who are they studying with. I've interviewed many of them. And then as I started to build a business, many of my clients, that would be their first thing, where it was like, how can I get a good doctor? And so I just naturally had this Rolodex of great functional medicine doctors who had great experience with autism, and they want to work with children with autism. That's a big difference. When you're with a doctor who is just on board and believes in your child as much, sometimes even more than you do, oh my goodness, the partnership that can happen. That's when a doctor doesn't question your ideas. When you're in that partnership and you're working with someone who's knowledgeable and interested and doesn't have any of those limiting beliefs as to what health really is. So it's about functional medicine, why anyone with autism really should explore functional medicine. And then it lists the functional medicine doctors who are really good in the United States with autism. There's over 70 of them.
And so you cut out for just a second there, but I think what you were saying is that this is the information that's in the book. That even, because I was going to say, where do we find the list of the doctors? That's also in the book, correct?
It's in the book, yes. So the book explains why functional medicine is important, how it's different than conventional medicine, and actually why you would want both. I'm an advocate of using all the possible tools that a child could use. Well, so having a conventional medicine doctor and a functional medicine doctor is really the way to go.
For people who've never even heard of a functional medicine doctor, never explored that before, can you give us an example of one thing that maybe you did with your daughter that you found really helped her, that was more functional medicine and not conventional medicine?
Sure, I can give an example. It's a universal example. Most autism parents really resonate with this. So if your child's not sleeping, you go to a doctor and they say, well, You can try melatonin. It seems to work for a lot of people, and just give that a try, right? And you try it, and most times it goes well. And then after a few weeks, it doesn't go so well anymore, right? Because it wasn't a solution to the problem. It was just this kind of temporary patch. You got a few good weeks of sleep, and then you're back at baseline. With functional medicine, the doctor will say, all right, what is really causing this lack of sleep? Is it low magnesium? Is it a gut infection? Is it neurotransmitter imbalances? What is it? Let's figure that out so that for the long term, this child can sleep. And then they'll also say, you know what, in the meantime, if you want to try, we can look at, depending upon what the problem is, a few supplements or so. So they give you that short-term fix, and also they want that long-term solution so that the child can sleep for the rest of their lives. That's the difference of functional medicine.
And I think a lot of people just went, oh, I really want this. Because, when the show House was on for so long, I remember so many people going, why aren't all doctors like House? Where they're looking for the underlying thing. Why are they all trying to slap a Band-Aid on it? Why isn't somebody trying to figure out what's causing that? Which is very interesting. But you touched on briefly, I know that forming partnerships for care is really important to you. And you touched on it briefly. Is there stuff in the book about how you form that partnership with your functional medicine doctor and maybe with your convention? Because I think a lot of us just don't even know how to bridge that.
Yeah. So when you're working with someone, that's what a functional medicine doctor is really looking for. They want to work with the patients who really want to figure things out. They're dedicated to change. So just by having a functional medicine doctor, you're starting off with someone who's looking for that partnership. Functional medicine appointments with a doctor, the shortest appointments are usually 30 minutes. That's a short appointment. Okay. So it's very different than conventional medicine, where on average it's like you get 7 minutes to speak with the doctor at most. So the book does touch upon partnership and how to approach that with the doctor, but also why it's important to look for, just because it works so synergistically. So if you have a functional medicine doctor who can help with supplements and different prescriptions for something if it's needed, but they're also interested in diet as well as, how the child's being educated and looking at things differently. That's where that power of partnership comes from, that synergy of leveraging everything together.
Well, I think we all are looking for that. How do I know that you're, when is the book available? Let's start there.
The book is available now. Okay. So it came out in March. It's on Amazon. You can buy the paperback version or the electronic version. And you could also go to thelionsreport.com if you want to get more information about me. And my name, the last name is Lyons. Okay. So thelionsreport.com.
Okay. So, and the book is The Lyons Report 2020, Autism and Functional Medicine Doctors. But spell out your whole website for us again.
Sure. The website is thelionsreport.com. So THELYONSREPORT.com.
Dr. Lyons, thank you so much for being with us and for being patient with us, because I know we were running a little bit late, but we're excited to have you on here. And I did not know that you were somebody who watched the show, so that's especially exciting.
It is. I feel it's very surreal talking to you.
Well, it's like that for me too. So now we're lifelong friends. So thank you so much for being here with us. And then we'll look forward to having you back on again.
Certainly.
When things are not so weird and we'll be able to see you and talk to you. And
yes, definitely.
Maybe there'll be a time when we can have you in the studio. And wouldn't that be exciting?
That would.
In a different era, we'll make that happen. Well, thank you so much for being with us. And we'll look forward to people getting your book, The Lyons Report. And Lyons is spelled Lyons, Report 2020, Autism and Functional Medicine Doctors. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And so that was Dr. Lyons. I've got so much that I want to cover here in just a couple of minutes, and I do want to stay a little bit late here. Lori from the D says, good afternoon. I was wondering if you could recommend an app for a 3-year-old nonverbal child to help him communicate. And there are so many different apps that can, and they range in price. I will say that I think our favorite among the experts that I spend most time with is Proloquo 2. But that is probably one of the most expensive ones. And so I do want to caution you about that. There are many text to chat that you can download. Some of them are free. And I would say if money is an issue, you could try a couple out to see what works well for you and works well for them. If money is not an issue, you have a little bit of money, or you can ask your insurance company for it, I would go right to Proloquo 2. They don't pay us anything to sponsor. It is just the most user-friendly, but it is the most expensive, just keeping it real. Saying hi to Karen. And Lori says, thank you for all the great information that you give to us. It's greatly appreciated. I'm still buying things off your Christmas list. And why not? They're good toys. And she says that her child really loved Clack, that it was a big hit. Didn't you love? Clack is a really cool game. And if you haven't already seen our toy guide, be like Lori. Go on our website, autism-live.com. The toy guide is at the top, and you can see this year's toy guide there. If you want to see the last 2 years, go on the blog. The blog currently is broken. I can't upload anything else to it, but the blogs that are there are already there, and we have the last 2 years of toy guides, and toys are good no matter which year. Okay, and and Jessie said she couldn't wait for the law segment. The local school districts are not giving us any guidance. Will IDEA be suspended for this period of time? And I think none of us knows. COPA put out a statement earlier this week that there was some language put into the stimulus package for the COVID-19 stimulus package that was being debated, and we were all being asked to write to our senators. You can go to copa.net, COPAA.net, to see more about that, but nobody knows what's going to happen. But right now, when we started the show, IDEA was still in place. So I just want to look very briefly to see if there are other comments. I know that we're a little bit past time. You know what? My computer's not going to let me. It's being salty, my computer, as it is. Now, we are getting this under control and finding the different ways that this works. And we've got a way that's going to be a little bit more visually stimulating. We are going to get our guests back so that you can see them. And we are working on that. But I just want to take a second and thank you guys for being with us and hanging in and checking out the back of my shaved head. Tomorrow on the show, this is serious business. Art Wilke is going to be here with us talking about assaultive behavior management, along with Dr. Sienna Greener-Wooten. If you have a kiddo with challenging behavior, if you are being hit, tomorrow is the show that is not to be missed. Even if you can't watch us at the time that we're live, make sure that you catch it in podcast, right? On Wednesday, we are having either Dr. Doreen Crampichet answer questions live, or Evelyn Kung, the clinical director of CARD, will be here answering questions. I don't know which one. On Thursday, we have a pediatric neurologist who's going to talk about some of the effects that COVID have had on our kids. And on Friday, we have licensed marriage and family therapist Vince Redmond, who's going to be joining us, along with Leah Hirschfeld from the research department of CARD with some new research for us. So that's going to shape up our week, but we're looking forward. We're booking shows, and we're even talking about adding an extra hour a day. So we'd love to hear from you guys. What would you want more information about? When would you want it? How would you want it? Write to me. You can always get me at s.penrod@autism-live.com. s.penrod@autism-live.com. I thank you for being here with us and staying a little bit later. We'll be back tomorrow. And if you are a CARD parent, make sure that you're tuning in at 4:00 this afternoon to our live PTA webinar. But to everyone, I'll see you tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. No, really, I'm going to go. I just don't know how to get off. I'm going to show you the websites. Take a look.
The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
We're just coming back live, and Dr. Sienna Greener-Wooten is here with us live, and Art Wilke is also here with us live. And I want to pause for just a second and have them introduce themselves in terms of what their current positions are at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. So Dr. Sienna Greener-Wooten, would you like to start us off?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Sienna. I am the Director of Clinical Quality for CARD. So what that means is I make sure that we are taking care of all of our families and all of our clients as best we possibly can, and that everyone is making amazing progress, even in this time where we're kind of having to shift some of our procedures and our models of therapy and supervision and caregiver training. We're still wanting to make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can in the best way we can possibly do it.
And thank you so much for your service. I have the opportunity every afternoon. We're doing a free webinar series just for our Center for Autism and Related Disorders clients. And I'm on that call with them every afternoon. And the amount of love and the outpouring of parents thanking you and your team, Dr. Greener-Wooten, is just amazing. I need to be sharing those with you because they're deeply appreciative of everything that you've put in place, honestly. But Art Wilke is also here with us, and Art is also one of my favorite people. When my kiddo was little, Art was one of the most reinforcing things in my son's day. And whenever we had the joy, Art didn't visit us very often, but when he did, my son would be so excited, and he couldn't say Art. He always put an H in front of A and I. So he was heart, 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 heart. And he would be so excited when Heart would come to our house, because Heart had video cameras, and he was most excited about that. So Art, why don't you tell the folks at home what your current position is at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders?
Currently, I head up a portion of Sienna's department, where I oversee individuals in all our centers that are capable of obtaining what's called an ABM expert, which is our system for physically managing crisis behavior. So I train those individuals to be able to train the staff in their particular centers, as well as consulting Sienna's team on various problem behavior cases that arise in different centers.
Yeah, and that's really why we've invited you guys today, because there are a lot of people that are at home that are in a little bit of crisis right now. I mentioned this at the start of the show, that that even for some people, the thought of being home alone with their child is frightening, because the child's behaviors can spin out of control, and sometimes there can be assaultive behavior, and that can be aimed at a caregiver. There can be destruction, there can be self-injury, there can be the hurting of other people. So this is a very serious subject, and we wanted to take it very seriously for those of you who are at home. And I know many of you are joining us for the first time. Thank you for being here. Art, I know that you have a PowerPoint presentation. What I'd like to do is have you share that right now. And I'm going to drop my picture out so that it can take up more space. And I'm going to give it over to you guys to talk about this.
So is that visible?
It is.
Make this into slideshow.
Don't we love technology?
All right. So again, we're just going to be talking about potential issues of problem behavior inside your home. Some of the things, the first thing to explain is that problem behavior comes in so many different guises that it's impossible for us to come up with an all-encompassing plan on this particular type of format. So the best I can try to do right now is to just give you a little bit of advice as to particular issues that often arise. So the very first thing that I would suggest doing is make sure that you establish a routine and try to keep things as normalized as possible in this very unnatural period. So make sure that your weekdays would continue to be just like a normal school day. You know, keep your wake up times consistent, keep your bedtimes consistent. Just like you would.
Can I just make a suggestion for Dr. Greener-Wooten and for Art? If both of you will turn off your camera, then we'll see this a little bit bigger and you might be a little bit more comfortable. So go ahead and turn off your cameras for now, but you can leave your, at the bottom, where it has your little video. There you go. And Art, if you'll click yours, then I think we can get this a little bit bigger. That's your phone, Art. It's the other one that you want to click, the one that has the camera. Looks like a video camera on its side. There we go. And I'm going to mute.
So again, try to keep your routines as normal as possible as to what you would have been doing during, if this was just a typical week and you were sending your child to school and to a center or whatever for receiving particular ABA services. Make sure that you set your meal times and snack times so that again, those are things that can be anticipated as to when these types of things are going to come. I mean, a lot of kids are going to be hanging around the kitchen, constantly looking to eat. So just try and maintain this system that this is when meals are. And if necessary, if you have a very picky eater, don't be afraid to set a time limit. Sometimes someone has to come into contact with not getting a full meal to understand that, hey, when it's here, I've got to eat quickly. It doesn't hurt to have a list of chores for your child. If they're capable of following those types of instructions and doing those, make sure that they're busy. Set up your school time just as though it was going to be a normal day. Make sure that you program in family fun time, just something where you can all just get together and relax, do something together as a group. And then make sure that you establish a bath hygiene routine. It's suggested that you would start this about 45 minutes to 30 minutes prior to whatever your bedtime that you have for your child. There's various things that you want to do. You're going to want to get teeth brushed. You're going to want to take a bath or a shower, whatever it's going to be, get put into your PJs, whatever they're going to wear that evening. And then once that's completed, then you move into quiet time where you don't allow any use of electronics. You want to try and get the mind to start shutting down at that time. And you could do stuff like reading a story, read a book, various things like that, and then move into your bedtime. Now, we do know that oftentimes your children are going to have sleep issues. If your child has disturbed sleep, make sure you bring that up to your BCBA, because there are sleep treatments that that we could use in various types of protocols, depending on the type of sleep disturbance that your child is displaying, that we could try to attend to those issues. All right? So it's very
and
important.
If I can jump in there for just a second, maybe if one or both of you, maybe Dr. Greener-Wooten, if you can address why establishing the routine is so important with all of our kids, not just the ones who are in danger of assaultive behavior management. Why is this so much the ticket? And you can put your camera back on if you choose. It didn't work the way I wanted it
to. Sure. Let me do that. Okay. A lot of our kids really thrive on routines, not just right now, and not just individuals who engage in severe challenging behavior, because there is this insistence kind of on sameness that can go an inappropriate way. And this is a way we can take that same thing and make it more appropriate. So if we establish a routine, then we're sort of playing into something that is deeply comforting for a lot of our kids and our families. So establish the routine that you want them to keep, and that will kind of keep your family going as smoothly as can happen during this time. And then that way, your kids are learning what to expect at different times. So then they're already starting to think about either, specific times associated with specific activities, or maybe even the sequence of events. So they might start to get used to, quiet time with no electronics, which might be really difficult in some situations. They'll start to expect that always happens after I put on my PJs. So then that is maybe a little less of a struggle to try and have compliance with, because it's part of a set routine, it's part of a schedule, it's part of a sequence. It starts to just be the way things are. So it's a little easier to adhere to some of those aspects of the routine that maybe aren't quite as preferred, or maybe are things that are not as fun typically. So that's something that can happen across the board with any kind of large day routine, like Art was discussing here, or even smaller routines within a certain time period. So Art, for instance, talked about the bath or the hygiene routine. So even within that one chunk of time, have the same set schedule of events that occur during that time. So people can start expecting what, comes after each other activity, and it starts to be a little easier to complete.
And in fact, this has been found to be so effective at helping everyone that this is widely being recommended for all of us during these times when it feels like so much is out of our control. We're all being encouraged to set a routine and to try to stick to it, to have as much normal as possible. So Art, I'm sorry I jumped in. Pick it up where you left off.
Oh, you're fine. Thanks, Shannon. The other thing that I didn't mention on this slide when you're talking about establishing your routines is one thing that's very, very important along with bedtime is that once your child awakens, get them out of their pajamas, okay? Don't let them lounge around in their pajamas all day long or do schoolwork in them. Get them dressed like you normally would. One of the reasons is that when you wear those types of clothes, it doesn't become a stimulus for them to understand that it's time for bed. So that's why you want to, as part of your bedtime routine and bath hygiene routine, is that once these pajamas go on, that means I need to start settling down and I'm going to go to sleep. All right, other things as far as your daily activity schedules, use a visual chart that goes over the various things that you may be doing over the course of a day, so that your child can anticipate what's coming next. In many ways, if your child has anxiety over not understanding what's going to happen next, being able to see on this chart what's coming helps alleviate those types of issues. Now, one of the things that we often do at a center is that we're going to allow the child to participate in choosing the order in which things are done. So you have some individuals that when there's an activity that they don't particularly like to do, they may, depending on that child, some of them want to get that done first, get it over with, and then the rest of their day feels a lot better for them. While there's others that are obviously going to try and delay that as long as possible. But having that idea of being able to choose for many people can be very, very reinforcing, and that can help establish how well your day is going to go. Okay, choice is one of those things that's big in many different things that we're going to talk about this morning. So the other thing, bored child's going to get into mischief. All right, so if we don't have those activities planned out, if we haven't made a good plan on how to use up the time of your day, that's oftentimes when you're going to see problem behavior starting to arise, or you're going to see fights between your children over various things. So set your environment. Choose the location where you're going to do your schoolwork or your ABA sessions. So if you've been going to centers or you've just been, your child's just been going to school, they have to know this area is where things like this are going to occur. And try to use them only for those types of activities. Now, if you don't have a lot of space, obviously, you know, we can make do, and kids are great at adapting. But it's always good to have this kind of visual cue. When I'm in this area, this is what's going to start happening. Okay. Also, make sure that you have all the materials that you're going to need. So if you're doing ABA type sessions, make sure that those materials are present. Okay. Now, if you have someone coming into your home still, and they're going to be doing the sessions, then they'll still need to be able to have access to those materials, and they'll probably be stored there overnight. So we just need to make sure that we know where they are. But if it turns out that you're the one that's actually being the therapist and working with them, you're going to want to make sure that you have all those materials easily available. Make sure that you have functional communication materials. That's what FCT stands for, functional communication training. And that's going to be something that's in probably almost all of your children's behavior intervention plans. FCT is a form of appropriate communication that we teach our children to try and communicate their wants and needs appropriately, rather than using their problem behavior in a manner of trying to communicate their need. So, for example, if your child has difficulty doing schoolwork and either they need help or they need a break, we might be training them to communicate that once they reach this level, they hand us this card, or they say a particular phrase that matches their desire, which is, I need a break or I need help, and that way they don't need to use their problem behavior. So having those materials is very important. The same thing with any type of communication system. So if your child is using PECS, one of the electronic type versions of communication, if those types of things aren't available and your child can't communicate with you, you're going to see problem behavior arise. Okay, so that's important. Make sure that you have those things easily available and always available. Do you have all the reinforcers you're going to need? Reinforcers are going to come in the guise of tokens for some of your children. And along with the tokens, you're going to have a token board. So depending on the schedule of reinforcement, and if you don't know what a schedule of reinforcement is, make sure that you speak with your BCBA. But a schedule of reinforcement simply means how often and when we're supplying that particular reinforcer. Are we doing it every time they comply with a demand? Are we providing it on a time-based system? How are we doing that? So those are things that tokens kind of along the lines of those visual charts. They allow your child to know how they're doing. So if they're on a schedule that they need to get 10 tokens before they're able to get a particular type of reinforcer, they watch as that token gets placed on the board, and it lets them know I've got to do this many more before I get reinforced, or whatever it is. Also know that whether you're using edible or non-edible reinforcers. So that's pretty easily understood. And then again, just make sure you know what your schedule of reinforcement is. Can't emphasize enough, establish a plan for problem behavior. So what I'm trying to say is think ahead about the type of problem behavior your child demonstrates. Sometimes that's going to be multiple types of problem behavior. Some of your children have aggression, some of them have self-injurious behavior, some of them have property destruction, some of them have all of those things. So you want to have a plan. Whenever I go to work with a child or I go into some form of session, I think about all the things I'm going to need to do before I ever start. I think about the nature of the problem behavior. So if you're dealing with someone who likes to pull hair, if you're dealing with someone who's a scratcher, if you're dealing with someone who bites, that tells me that I need to be aware that that's what this individual is likely going to do. So I need to make sure that I position myself in a manner that makes it more difficult for them to be able to engage in that type of behavior successfully. So that means I may need to be slightly behind them and to the side rather than directly in front of them, where someone can grab at you, they can scratch at you, and various things like that. Okay. Have you made the environment safe for yourself and others? So do you have protective equipment handy? There's various types of protective equipment that may be necessary depending on the types of problem behavior you're faced with. If you work for CARD, or if your child is with CARD, it's possible that if you need to have particular things like arm guards, shin guards, protective mats, various things like that, those things we can help you get ordered so that you have those inside your home. If you're listening and you're not associated with CARD, talk with your BCBA. They should have the availability as well of finding these items online and giving you ideas through links, because all this stuff can be purchased online, oftentimes through Amazon. Okay. So that you have the types of things that can keep yourself safe. Also consider, have you removed dangerous items? All right. So if you're working, if your child has property destruction, or they like to throw objects, things like that, have you picked up those types of things that might easily become thrown and injure someone else? It's important that everyone in the household knows what to do if problem behavior escalates. And what I'm talking about here is that they're not just engaging in their typical level of problem behavior, but they've reached a point where it's unsafe for you to be near them, they're unsafe for themselves. So this is usually we would call an all-out tantrum. Your child is out of control. What's your plan? What do you plan on doing? Have you discussed this with your BCBA? So it could be that you need to have a safe area that's designated, particularly if you have other children, and they understand that when you say something about, maybe you pick a particular code word or something like that, or when you tell them, go to this room, that they go in and they lock themselves into that room. And depending on the nature of your child's problem behavior, it may be necessary for you yourself to lock yourself into a room. Those are terrible situations when they arise, but you have to keep yourself as safe as much as anyone else. Sometimes it's just too difficult to try and manage that particular problem behavior. Now, it's also an issue that you have to plan ahead depending on the level of severity of your child's problem behavior. You should have discussed with your BCBA, and you should discuss with your family when would it be necessary to call 911. This isn't going to be an issue for every family, but it is going to be for some. So if that's a possibility for you, because your child has become too aggressive and you can't safely manage them, or maybe they're trying to run away or they have run away, you're going to need to call 911, and you definitely want to have a plan on when those parameters or criteria are met and when to do it. And we'll talk about this a little later in the slideshow, but it's probably not a bad idea if there's a possibility you think that you would have to call 911 is to have a conversation with your local area law enforcement and give them a clue as to who your child is and the types of situations that you're dealing with. Also consider, choose your battles. Don't consider that if you can't follow through with a demand, all right? So following through with a demand might mean that you need to physically guide your child to finish that. If you're not strong enough to physically guide your child, you may not want to place a particular demand, all right? So if your child's being a little bit hesitant or non-compliant, rather than giving a big, all-encompassing demand, so rather than giving them a demand to do the dishes, maybe it's better to start breaking that down into smaller portions. Like put the plate in the sink, and if they do that, we can provide them with some form of reinforcement, whether that's going to be praise or an edible or something like that. Then run the water. Break them down into smaller portions so that you can try and gain some victories. And that kind of falls along with using behavioral momentum. The smaller and easier the demand, and getting compliance helps start building overall compliance if things are being difficult. So think about what it is that you're going to do and choose your battles. And that would be the same thing is that if your child's being defiant and refusing to do a lot of different things. So there's probably going to be some of you where your child's going to refuse to get out of bed. So if that's an issue, what you can do is make sure that you're not letting them have highly preferred items during those times, because then that becomes a struggle to try and regain those items from them. Use those highly preferred items to get them to do what you want them to do. So where I was talking about breaking things into smaller portions, you could use what we call high probability demands, all right? So you could use in an instance that your child doesn't want to get out of bed, that you just start giving them high probability demands such as touch your nose. Well, I guess maybe during this virus, we shouldn't be touching our face, but maybe clap your hands, do this, where you can, if they do it, we can reinforce them. Rather than give them that reinforcer, maybe it's an iPad, don't give that to them at that time. Put it on the dresser where they have to get out of bed and go get it to be able to get reinforced. So sometimes just doing it for one demand's not enough, because the amount of time that they would receive that item isn't going to be worth their while. But if you continue giving them demands and they comply with it, they can build up that time in which they can engage with that particular item, and then again, make it so it's a system where they have to get out of bed, come over to a dresser to get it, and once you've got them up, move them out of the bedroom as quickly as you possibly can.
So Art, can I just jump in and ask some questions for clarification here? Because I know as a parent, the child's not getting up out of bed, and we've all been pre-programmed to start taking things away, like standing there and saying, heaven knows I've been guilty of this before, that you're standing there and saying, if you don't get up, you don't get your iPad. That's not what we're talking about here. We're not talking about that at all. You're saying just, put the iPad across the room and tell them they can go get it. Is that what you're saying?
Make them earn it. So you put it across the room, and then you give them that high probability demand where they earn access to it. But it depends on the magnitude of the reinforcement. So say for just doing that little demand, they might have only gained access to the iPad for 10 seconds. That might not be reinforcing enough for them to get out of bed. But if you continue giving those little demands that they can be compliant with, it might build up to 30 seconds, which is then finally enough for them to get out of bed. So make them earn it, and then put it in a position to where they have to do something that you want to accomplish, rather than turning into a physical struggle to try and physically put them out of bed and giving them an opportunity to aggress toward you or make things more difficult for you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay. All right. And however, just be careful that you don't set a precedent to where you let your child get away with not completing demands or returning items. Sometimes, again, if it's going to turn into a major battle and you're not in a position to keep your other children safe or keep yourself safe, sometimes you just have to let them win. But we want to try and minimize those types of opportunities. And that's sort of part of planning ahead so that we don't get ourselves stuck in those types of situations. It can be important to use an intervention that's called extinction. Extinction involves the removal of the reinforcer that we think is causing that problem behavior to occur. So if we think that problem behavior is associated with gaining your attention and it's sensitive to you saying something along the lines of stop that or quit doing that, rather than doing that, you basically are ignoring the behavior. Extinction is one of the most powerful forms of stopping problem behavior, but it's very difficult to do if you're not prepared to follow through. Okay? So what I mean is that when you use extinction, what's going to happen, and is associated with using it, is that the problem behavior initially is going to increase, because what your child's going to do is they're going to continue doing what they're doing to see if you're really going to follow through. Are you really going to ignore me, or are you really not going to give me that item? So one of the examples we often use when we're talking about extinction is the child that has a tantrum in the grocery line because they don't get a candy bar. So they're going to plop down on the floor, they're going to scream, they're going to cry, they're going to kick, all looking to see, are you going to give in and give that to me? Or are you just going to keep on going and then pay for your goods and then go ahead and walk on out to the car? That's an example of extinction. And once your child learns that that's what's going to happen, extinction can be very, very powerful at reducing the occurrence of those types of problem behaviors. Now, depending on the nature of the problem behavior, that's going to give you some, you have to choose as to whether it's the right type of intervention that you would be using. And of course, those types of things you're going to be discussing with your BCBA, okay? But what I would suggest is that if you don't know what to do, try not to say anything about something in the moment, so that then you can communicate with your BCBA as soon as possible to try and figure out how to deal with that particular issue. Shannon, did you have a?
Yeah, I just, so for parents who maybe are a little confused about that, sometimes our kids are doing things for attention. And even when we don't mean to, like when you said, if we say stop that, that's just enough attention to ensure that it keeps on happening. So basically what you're saying then, Art, is if you're not sure how to respond, try to respond kind of neutrally so that we're not feeding the machine. Because if we're giving it the attention, then it's for sure going to come back. So it is super important to be conveying these things to whoever your supervisor is, to whoever your BCBA is, so that they can help you through these. Correct? That's what you just said.
All right. And then just along with that, new behaviors may pop up. So when you're successful at dealing with a particular type of problem behavior, let's say your child engages in self-injurious behavior. Self-injurious behavior might be where they hit themselves in the head with their fist or their open hand. Whenever possible, we want to try and block that type of behavior from occurring. And what happens most often, when you're successful at stopping a child from engaging in being able to hit themselves, they'll usually switch topographies, which means they'll go from trying to hit themselves with their hand to now maybe they try to bring a knee up and hit themselves in the chin. Or they get angry because they're not getting what they want out of striking themselves, and they become aggressive. So they may try to reach up and grab you and scratch you. They may try to hit you, or they may try to bite you. So you need to be aware that new behaviors can occur when you're successful at dealing with another type of behavior. Okay? So when that happens, make sure that you make note of what the new behavior is, if this is something you haven't seen before, and notify your supervisor or BCBA as soon as you possibly can, but do your best not to attend to that new behavior. Now, if it's something that's causing them harm, obviously you want to be blocking it as much as possible. And the same sort of thing. If it's aggressive and it's going to hurt you, you want to try and block it as best that you possibly can, okay? But again, so let's say that it was a behavior where they injured themselves, maybe they gave themselves a bloody nose. And this isn't something that's typically in their repertoire. Try to deal with cleaning up that bloody nose without making a big ordeal over it and giving them any more reinforcement than they've already received. So again, this is easier said than done when it's your child and they're hurt and they're bleeding, to just be sort of clinical about it and just dab their nose clean and move on. But if possible, that's kind of the best way to try and go about it if you can, okay? Maybe well after the fact, you might, maybe 15 minutes or so, you could give them a little bit of more concerned care than in the moment. Okay, one stratagem that you might use is giving your child choices. So you've got your child being a little bit stubborn. It's time to go. It's time to go back inside. You've been out and you've been playing for a while out in the backyard, and they don't want to go back in. Give them a choice. We can do this for one more minute, or we can go inside and we can do this for this type of, at this moment. And give them a choice and make them choose which one it is that they want, so that you can then take control of the situation again. Sienna, do you have a better example? I don't think that was a really good one.
I think it was good. Shannon, did you want us to spend a little more time going over this particular section, or are you ready for us to keep going? Okay, let's keep going.
We'll keep going. All right, another strategy.
I'm sorry, I was muted and I didn't realize it. people have been writing in and asking if there's a way that they're going to be able to access this PowerPoint later on so that they can go over it themselves. So I think that if they are able to watch it, I think we should keep on because we're running out of time. But if they aren't able to access it, maybe we should take a minute. What do you think?
They can access it. I can get this to you.
Okay, so then I think we should move on. And then when people have questions, we're going to be here live every day. They can be writing in and asking the questions and have the opportunity to go over this on their own time. But I think keep on going, Art.
All right, so I'll try and speed it up then. Another strategy that you can use is enriching the environment. So consider that when you're busy, you've got to do a phone call, you're preparing dinner, you're dealing with another one of your children, you've got to do work for your job. Enrich the environment for them. So give them multiple things that they can do. That might be having access to several different types of highly preferred items, so that keeps them occupied rather than constantly bugging you for attention or I want this or to do that. Okay? So that's what enriched environment would be. Reinforcers. Reinforcers are typically multiple types of things. It could be praise, where you're telling them great job for doing something. It could be a small piece of edible. Depending on the schedule of reinforcement, the size of those reinforcers are going to change. If you have to work a lot to gain that edible, you probably get a whole Oreo rather than just a tiny little piece for just doing one particular portion of it. If you're using non-edibles, it could be various types of things such as toys, games. It could be hugs. It could be the tokens themselves. Tokens often work as reinforcers. But the reason that reinforcement's important is it's what motivates us to do things. So if you're getting a paycheck, that's one of your reinforcers. It motivates you to do your job. And for most of us, that reinforcer makes us happy.
But Art, it's important for us to remember, right, that what's reinforcing to us isn't necessarily reinforcing to our kiddos. And if something is reinforcing to your kiddo this morning, it may not be the thing that's reinforcing this afternoon. So we got to be changing that stuff up, right?
Yes, that's a great point. And the other thing to be aware of too is that if you're using a reinforcer too much, it's going to lose its reinforcing qualities. So you probably want to have multiple options available to you, and you want to rotate through those various reinforcers. And if you're using reinforcers for work, schoolwork, then we do, when we're doing ABA sessions, we do what's called a preference assessment, where we ask them, here's a couple different items, choose what it is that you want to work for to get this done. So it could be 2 separate toys, whatever it is, but let them choose what they want to work for rather than us picking for them. Thank you, Shannon. That's a very good point. I'm sorry.
And I just want to say too, as far as I mentioned this the other day on the show, you and I have a very good friend that I learned so much from her, that she has one thing that she knows her kids love. They love Kool-Aid. And when it's time for homework or schoolwork, that is the only time that Kool-Aid is allowed. And she puts a big picture of it on the table, and they can drink as much Kool-Aid as they want if they're doing their schoolwork, which I think that is absolutely brilliant. Now, Kool-Aid wouldn't be the thing for my kid, but that thing of having that special reinforcer, and it's only available when we're working on schoolwork. I love that.
So, why do problem behaviors occur? You just have to remember that problem behavior is going to be a form of communication. They're trying to tell us something by using their problem behavior. So if we think that it's due to trying to get your attention, it could be that I want you to play with me, or I need your attention. If they're engaging in it because they don't like doing work, what we call escape. It's I don't want to do this, or I need help, or I need a break. If it's a tangible, which is an object, which could be having access to a particular toy or an activity or something along the lines of that, it's that I want to do this more, or I want that particular toy back. And then there's 2 different types of automatic reinforcement. Automatic reinforcement is an all-encompassing term for something that there's something about that particular behavior is reinforcing in its own right. Sometimes they're telling us they hurt when they engage in a particular type of behavior, and then other times they're telling us that this feels good. So stereotypic behavior like hand flapping or waving, typically that's something that makes them feel good. It settles them down. Whereas if they're hitting or they're scratching at their stomach all the time, that's probably telling us that maybe they have to go to the bathroom, maybe they're constipated, maybe they hurt, something along the lines of that. So problem behavior is a form of communication. Continue planning ahead. So this kind of goes along with an enriched environment, but let's say your child is sensitive to attention. You've got to do a phone call, or you need to prepare dinner or something along the lines of that. Spend 5 minutes of really high quality attention with your child before you start that long activity, and see if maybe that doesn't help settle them down so that they aren't constantly bothering you for things. And then if it's a really long activity, you may have to schedule in little breaks to where you can attend to your child. Be sure to praise your child when they do something that they're asked to do, provide tokens or other reinforcers on their schedule of reinforcement. Also planning ahead. If your child engages in a particularly dangerous behavior that's called pica, which is the ingestion of inedible objects, it's important that you know CPR or that you at least know the Heimlich maneuver. Be aware that any item that can fit through a toilet paper tube can be swallowed. Make sure that your child's environment's been scanned and that environment's clear of anything that's small enough to ingest, and then offer alternatives. Give them items that they can put their mouth on that are too large for them to be able to get inside their mouths to swallow. So maybe a ball, something along the lines of that. Some of your children may have mouthing tubes. Now this is different. Pica is different than mouthing. Mouthing is simply putting their mouths on an object. Pica is where they want to eat and swallow this inedible object. So it's very, very dangerous. Okay, so make sure that you're scanning your environment for items that they can do that to. Does your child hit themselves? If they do, make sure that you have protective equipment. That could be mats, arm guards. I use beanbag chairs whenever possible to help me block things. Pillows can work in a pinch. And then what I really love, particularly if your child engages in behavior like head banging, where they bang their head on hard surfaces, is use those foam garden kneelers. Those are very easy to manipulate. They have a handle, and you can get it between their head and a hard surface very quickly. What's very, very, very important, if your child engages in head banging, banging their head against a hard surface, you have to have some form of protective equipment with you at all times. So a pillow or a garden kneeler are perfect for working with your children, because it's instinctual to try and put your hand or part of your body between their head and a hard surface. And if you do that, you're going to get injured. So don't do that. Please, please, please never, ever do that. Okay? Then you also have to consider when you let SID occur. All right? Sometimes your child is when they bite their hand. If you try to block that, or if you are constantly pulling their hand out of their mouth, you're making it happen more. So this is a fine line. Sometimes you're better off letting them bite if they're not actually breaking their skin and causing a real injury other than some redness. Sometimes it's better to let them engage in that behavior. That's something that you want to talk with your BCBA and your supervisor about. It's just something to consider. Okay. Does your child hit, kick, bite, pull hair? Always know where their head is and mouth are in relationship to you. So don't let yourself get head butted by putting your head right next to theirs without having a hand on top of their head. So what I'm describing is just take the flat part of your hand and place it on top of their head if you have to bring your head in close proximity to theirs, so that they can't come forward and bite you or they can't headbutt you. Okay, make sure you try to stay away from being directly in front of them. So don't bend over in front of your child to tie their shoes. If they need to have help tying their shoes, be to their side and then lift their foot up so it rests on your knee so that you can reach over and tie their shoe. It's harder for them to kick you from that position. Dress appropriately. So if they're dealing with someone who scratches or pinches or bites, use protective equipment. So that could be arm guards. It could be wearing long sleeves with very heavy material. So something like a denim jacket or something like that gives you a little bit more protection. And then if you're working with a hair puller, make sure that you keep your hair pulled back and as tight to your head as possible, and wear hats whenever possible. Just remember, don't reach in front of your child's mouth. And does your child break or throw things? Make the environment as safe as possible. Remove as many throwable items or objects away. Consider giving them soft items that they can throw. Whenever I work with one of these types of kids in a session room, I usually offer them soft plush toys, so that if they're going to throw it and it makes contact with me, I'm not going to get hurt by it. Make sure that you hide all the precious family heirlooms. Don't let those get destroyed or let them get thrown. And then use protective mats. You can use a seat or a sofa cushion. You can use beanbag chairs to help block things being thrown and protecting yourself, getting those in front of you. If your child engages in running away, which we call elopement, make sure that your exits or your homes are locked and or child-proofed. Don't block the exits with furniture or things like that. Make sure that they're locked somehow and that others can get in if it's an emergency type situation, or others know how to work those locks to get out. If possible, install child door and window alarms. You can get these via Amazon. Bed Bath & Beyond carry those, and I don't know if Babies R Us is still a viable option, but any of those baby type stores always had these types of materials available. Be sure to stay within arm's reach if you're out of doors and your child has a habit of running away. Your BCBA should be giving you strategies to teach appropriate walking, and it's probably a very good idea that if your child has a history of running away, if you haven't already had contact with law enforcement, that you maybe give them a picture of your child and let them know that they have a history of doing this, and that your particular types of situations, so they know how to respond in the event that your child runs away. Lastly, make sure that you consult with your BCBA or your case supervisor to talk about what you need to do for problem behavior. Be ready to stay flexible, all right? So not everything's going to be worth having a battle over. Sometimes just let it go. You got to take care of yourselves too, all right? So make sure that in all this, the one thing that we haven't talked about is it's every bit as important that you take care of your own mental and physical health. So make sure that you're in those daily activities and daily schedules. You're scheduling something in just for you, so that you get that time to get away, spend some time on the rowing machine, the bike, get out for a walk, whatever you can to de-stress yourself, because this is going to be a very, very stressful time. So you need to watch out for yourself as much as you do the rest of your family. Remember that if you don't know what to do in the moment, it's always best to try not saying anything about it in that particular moment, but then consult your BCBA or your supervisor as soon as possible. Try to be prepared as much as you possibly can, and then all you can do is you can only do the best that you can do, and that's all anybody can ever do. So don't beat yourself up when things are hard. If you can't do everything, nobody can.
Thank you so much, Art. If you want to stop sharing that, we'll find a way to be able to get this PowerPoint in a place where you guys can access it. But Dr. Greener-Wooten, is there stuff that you would like to add at this point?
I don't think so. I think one of the probably most important of, all of the slides that Art just reviewed is the one regarding function. Just remembering that somebody is engaging in challenging behavior. So if you can figure out the why behind it, even if you don't know exactly what intervention is supposed to be utilized, knowing the why can help you start to think through, okay, if they are biting me because it seems like they're wanting something that I have, I'm not quite sure what I'm supposed to do in that situation, but thinking through what is a more appropriate way of them accessing that thing that they want that I have other than biting. It's a great first step. So always, I think, keeping that in mind along with safety. So if you have a child who engages in some sort of severe challenging behavior, strategies to keep everybody safe and to make sure you have protective equipment and have a crisis plan in place are extremely important. So know what needs to happen if something does get to the point of needing to bring in additional emergency personnel, or if there's been an injury or those types of things, so that when you're in the crisis, you have that plan that you're already familiar with.
Yeah, super important. And I just want to say for a lot of our families that are out there, as much as you can do ahead of time, these strategies that they were giving about setting up a really enriching environment, about giving your kiddos an opportunity to make a choice. I think we're all feeling like we're out of control right now. And so our kiddos are too. And if they have a choice, if we can head these things off before they happen, so much the better. But sometimes it's too late, right? And so utilize these strategies that they have given you guys. We've gone over what our prescribed time was for the live show, but we had a little break there in the middle. So I just want to thank the two of you for taking the time to put this together. And Art will be in contact with you so that we can get the PowerPoint and find a way to get it to viewers who want that. I do want to say that tomorrow on the live show, we are having, I'm not 100% sure who, it's either going to be Dr. Doreen Grampiche answering your questions, or it will be Evelyn Kung, the clinical director at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. So if you have questions from this presentation, they can answer your questions as well tomorrow. But thank you so much, Art and Dr. Greener-Wooten, for being with us today. If you guys want to go ahead and drop off the call, I'm just going to do our ender here, and then we're going to say goodbye for today. But I do want to let folks know, bye-bye. And I don't know why I'm small and everything else is so big, but it doesn't matter. You can still see me. I don't know why that is, but we're not going to question it. Don't forget, if you are a CARD family, we are doing those free webinars in the afternoon too. Those are at 4 o'clock every day, and check your email because you have codes to them that came to you from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. But again, back here tomorrow with either Dr. Doreen Grampiche for Ask Dr. Doreen, or Evelyn Kung, clinical director at CARD. So we will see you then. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're coming to you live from my house. Actually, we're coming to you live from several different locations, and we want to do a big shout out to our producer, Traven Hardy, who is making this all work, and you even got to see some of the opener. If that doesn't make us force us to do a new opener, then I don't know what would. Like, we're still showing the opener from so long ago when my hair was a different color and I weighed a different amount, and it was an entirely different era, right? But it doesn't matter. We're rewriting the rule book every single day here, all of us together, right? Si se puede, we can do this. So I want to welcome you to this live show. We're going to be with you, internet willing, for the next hour live, talking about autism from a 360-degree perspective. And of course, because it's Wednesday, my favorite day, we have our favorite guest, Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is here for Ask Dr. Doreen. And in just a second, she's going to be helping us to answer your questions live here on the show. So you guys can be writing in. Now, normally, Traven cycles through a whole bunch of different websites and shows you, but we've kind of streamlined it. So we want to take just a second and show you all the different ways that you can connect to Autism Live. I don't want you to forget that our homepage is autism-live.com. And when you go there, there are lots of things that you can do. We've got almost 9 years of videos backlogged for you. It's a library of experts answering questions about a wide variety of different things. I would venture that almost any question that you had before COVID was there. Now, new rule book, right? So there might be questions, I would assume that there are questions that you have with this new rule book. That is why we have expanded our live programming. We have more experts than ever here on the show. And who better than Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh? And she is here with us right now. So we haven't been able to show you, or at least that I can see, but we're going to show you that graphic with all the different ways that you can connect. But autism-live.com, great way. Facebook, a great way to connect with us. YouTube. But if you're looking to watch later on when we're not live, lots of different ways that you can watch too. We're on iTunes, we're on iHeartRadio, we're on Deezer. Still don't know what that is. Somebody needs to tell me what that is. I keep saying I'm a geezer. I don't know what Deezer is. It's getting old. Somebody's got to explain it to me. But lots of different ways to watch us, whether you want to watch us live or recorded. So I hope that you will participate. We look forward to hearing from you. I do think that that's the most fun for us, is when we're talking to you guys live. So I want to take this opportunity right now to welcome to Granpeesheh for Ask Dr. Doreen. I don't think we're going to play the Ask Dr. Doreen opener, but Dr. Doreen, I know that you're here. If you want to start your microphone, and there she is, and looking lovely this fine morning. Hello and good morning.
Good morning,
How are
Shannon.
you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Good. We've got just a little bit of an internet lag here, so we're going to see if we can't tighten that up. But thrilled that you are here. And for people who don't know you, you are really an expert in the field of autism. I believe the preeminent expert in the field in our time, in any time. You've been working in this field for way longer than you should admit. Is
40, 40, more than 40 years, right? 42 years.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy amount of time working. And so we're getting quite a lag. So Traven, do everything that you can to tighten up our lag. But we are going to have you answering questions. We do want to make sure that everybody gets the disclaimer that there is no expert in any field who could give individual specific advice in this particular format. But we do encourage you to be writing in your questions right now to us, and we will take as many of them as we can live. Now, of course, I've moved things around on my desktop. I want to start with a question that came in this morning. The question is, I have a 25-year-old son on the spectrum living at home with me. He's barely getting by in his community with the help of his ABA aides, who I pay through an FMS under his self-determination program, because this is a person in the state of California. And in California, some of our folks do have self-determination right now. She says that 2 days ago, our BCBA supervisor, who was billing us $6,000 per month for 51 hours of supervision, notified us she was doubling her rates. I cannot afford that because my son's annual budget is fixed. Can you help? And she did specify that she is in the state of California. Now, Dr. Grampuchet, we live in interesting times. And for this person, this is a very interesting setup that is unlike most other people because they do have that self-determination, but this seems highly irregular to me. And this doubling of the price overnight, talk to me, talk to us. Yeah. Let us know what you think about this.
Yeah, Shannon, can you hear me okay? Is the lag just on the video or also on the sound?
No, the lag seems to be just on the video, but if at any point that we feel like this isn't working, have you got your phone by you? What I can do is call you.
Okay. Yeah, I am on my phone. Actually, I'm using my phone. I'm not using the computer sound.
Okay. I see.
So, yeah. Yeah, so what I was going to say is that this does seem very unusual because, well, first of all, that $6,000 per month for 51 hours essentially means that you are paying your supervisor, the BCBA, somewhere around $117 an hour, which to begin with is high. And if the individual is doubling, that is ridiculous and is just not ethical, I think. So I would say that you should definitely try to find another BCBA. They're not going to charge you that high. And secondly, I don't know if 51 hours of supervision in a month seems extremely high to me. So I don't know why you would need 51 hours in a month. That just seems really, really high, especially if you have aides who are working with your son. You probably, if you have aides and the aides are trained well, I can't see you needing more than, let's say, a maximum of 15, 16 hours a month of supervision. That's absolutely the maximum.
Yeah, and especially, the self-determination thing, for those of you who don't know, here in the state of California, we're moving towards a system we have what we call the regional centers. And this is really an amazing thing that allowed so much of ABA to proliferate in California throughout the 90s and the aughts. It's how my son was able to get therapy because there was no insurance funding, right? And the regional center has been charged here in California with making sure that individuals who have different abilities get resources and have access to the things that will help them. So that is how a lot of us were paying for our ABA before insurance. And right as insurance started to pay for it, it was a godsend because the regional center, there were so many kids who needed it. The state of California was going bankrupt because there was no way to fund everybody, right? So it was desperately needed that insurance. But the regional center still wanted to be supporting, and there were outside services that the regional center would help to pay for. And in some places, they were paying for co-pays for a period of time. But they're moving to a model about self-determination. If you're in the state of California, we did a great show with two of the leaders of the self-determination program from the regional center, and you can watch that in our archives if you want to know more about it. But we're quickly moving to a point where the client gets to choose how they want to spend their money. So there's a set allotment of money for them, and they get to say, well, what I really want to do, I need somebody to help me, especially for our older clients. I need someone to help me to learn how to ride a bus to get to my job. I need, and so there were different sets of services, and you could use it for ABA, or you could use it for occupational skills, or, so many other things. But it's very interesting that for this person who lives in California, I would think almost everybody in California has insurance funding. Either you have it through you can get it through the exchange, or if you have it through your employer, or you might be eligible for Medi-Cal if you don't have an employer. And it seems like to me that maybe if this parent were to get Medi-Cal, then she wouldn't have to be paying anything out of pocket. Is that how you see it too, Dr. Granpeesheh?
I do, but I see a lot of our patients who are older, because in California, of course, they used to be supported through the regional center system. And a lot of those individuals are not necessarily then referred or transferred directly to insurance. And they tend to go to other forms of funding, which might be the case here.
Okay, well, definitely things for this parent to look into. I'm concerned because it keeps giving us a message that our internet is struggling to, and I don't know whether that's on my end or Traven's end or whose end, but I wanted to take just a quick second, Dr. Granpeesheh, and remind everybody you can be sending us in your questions, and Traven send those over to me, but we've been in a conversation with the folks over at Skills, and they're letting us know that they have made some more training available for parents. There is some free training on IBT, which is the Institute for Behavioral Training. And they especially have a new program that they're going to be starting that is just about supporting parents at home. And so they wanted you to know that you can go over to ibehavioraltraining.com to find out more about those services. And they're going to be putting out regular lessons on a daily basis to help support parents with what they're doing at home. And they've also discounted the skills program, which we talk a lot here on the show with Dr. Granpeesheh about. So you can go to skillsforautism.com and find out, ask for the discount. Like a lot of people, they're giving great discounts for parents who are affected by COVID-19, and making it possible for them to continue to give resources as well. Now, Dr. Granpeesheh, people are on different timelines with their seclusion. I remember thinking last week when everybody was making the big effort to get people at home and to get services set up at home, it was very hectic. It was very, very stressful. And I remember thinking last week, well, next week is going to be so much better.
Yeah.
Like once we all get settled in, it's going to be so much better. But what I'm hearing from parents is that now that the work of figuring out, okay, how do we get home, whether you're working from home or not working from home, whether you're having therapy at home, not having therapy at home, like all of that was being decided last week. And so now the fear and anxiety and panic in some cases is settling in. And so overwhelmingly, what I have been hearing from parents right now is that they're like in this moment in time, they're just trying to manage their anxiety. And I wondered, as somebody who is a visionary, as somebody who is a leader, as somebody who has helped us through so many different things that have happened with autism, if you have anything that you want to say to the families at home about this next period of time that we're facing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will probably have a lot to say about it. I do kind of want to, I assume that a lot of the families, whether or not they're with CARD, are probably experiencing something similar to what our families at CARD are experiencing. So I'll maybe talk a little bit about that, and then I can talk a little bit more about some of the things that you can do yourselves to help with what's going on in your lives right now. So, at CARD last week, you're right, Shannon, we spent a lot of the week just contacting our families, and I think we still are this week. We have a lot of families, as you can imagine, over 6,000, and we're contacting each one to see what they would like to do. the way that we're processing it is that we're basically talking to the families and saying, okay, what are your needs right now? Can we support you? What would you like to get your therapy still? Would you like to get supervision, parent training, all these services that we offer? And if the family is open to it, and if the state allows it, we then go to their provider and their payer, so their insurance company or whoever else is paying for their services. And the progress that we made over the last week was that we were able to get almost 100% of our payers, our insurance companies are saying, go ahead, provide the services however you can provide them, including telehealth, when it comes to both supervision and parent training. And about 30% or so of our payers have also said, go ahead and do telehealth therapy if you need to as well. So one-to-one therapy with the children via telehealth. So what we've done is we're in the process of transitioning as many of our patients as we can and as the families want to a sort of online telehealth mode of communication with the supervisors, the BCBAs, the folks who will be doing parent training and teaching our families kind of how to manage things, as well as trying to develop programs. And this is, I think, a lot of our emphasis this week is on developing programs that the therapists, our behavior techs, can actually do via telehealth. I will say that the bulk of our services still to this week are in-home services. We did close down temporarily all of our sites, and we're providing therapy in-home to our patients. The majority of our services being provided by far are still in-home, which in itself is incredible. I mean, first of all, legally we're allowed to, because a lot of the shelter in place or shelter at home regulations that are passing allow and very specifically require ABA providers to be exempt. So essentially, because we are healthcare providers, because this service is medically necessary, we are funded and allowed to continue in cities where there's a shelter regulation in place. We're required to continue, just like first responders, and do our very best to provide services to our patients in their homes. So we're doing that. We have a lot of behavior technicians, therapists who are willing to continue doing that. They are, I think I refer to them as CARDS heroes, because they truly are. And for them, we are developing tons and tons of programs so that the day that we're not allowed, or if the regulations become more strict, and in certain locations we find it impossible to work in the homes, then we will start providing more and more telehealth services, even through our BTs, through our behavior techs. Now, I think the reason that we're doing all of this is a few different things. Obviously, from our perspective, we work very hard to make sure that the patients, the children, do not lose their skills. We've worked all year long to teach these skills and change challenging behaviors. And this is probably a time where, we have to do everything we can to try to maintain those positive skills and try to maintain all the things that our patients have learned. So families, I imagine, Shannon, are going through some difficult times right now because potentially their children are starting to exhibit challenging behaviors, maybe that were under control before, and they're very difficult to control because their ABA therapy has reduced. So, some of the thoughts that I have around this, first of all, I think for any family who is able to, you need to look at this as an opportunity. This time that you have at home with your children, with your child on the spectrum, is an opportunity for learning. And I know it's very hard. I mean, you know, I'm supposed to be at this point, Shannon, sort of sad and you know, having a lot of free time, but yeah, I laugh too, because I probably have never worked so hard in my life. I think the last email I sent last night was at 1:30 in the morning. So, and I start very early every day to try to help the leadership at CARD. But having said that, I know families are very busy in your homes. There's several things you can do right now. First of all, you should definitely try to set a routine for your child. And the routine should not be just based on one parent's availability. The routine should kind of pull in all family members if possible, because we want to make sure you survive as well. So, you know, let's assume you have a family of, you have one child on the spectrum and maybe two other children who are not on the spectrum, who might be older, younger, whatever it is. What I recommend is that you maybe try to have, let's say, a period of time during the day where you are doing some exercises or sports or physical activity for all of the children. It could be anything. It could be dancing. It could be just, you know, floor exercises. It could be running in the backyard, whatever it is. And then you also have a period of time where the other children are probably still doing some academic work. So I think it might be a good idea to print online maybe some educational worksheets that you can easily find for your child on the spectrum. And those will help maintain some of the academic skills if you're concerned about losing those skills. You also can find online a lot of other educational types of activities. There's lots and lots of apps, as well as places online, like social gatherings online for children who need the social contact. There are apps that will help your child work on whatever they were working on in their program through ABA. So you need to schedule, let's say, an hour right after the workout for your child to be doing educational types of activities online. After that, I would probably try to schedule maybe some crafts or maybe some cooking or some types of things that you can do, adaptive skills that you can do at home, so that your child gets a really nice routine going, and make sure that you are pulling in other family members to assist so that you occasionally will have a little bit of time yourself. Now, the reason for that, obviously, we all need to have a little time ourselves, but also because I really feel like this is the time where parents would significantly benefit from, as you said, as an example, all the parent training that is available on IBT, Institute for Behavior Training, and other resources as well. This is the time where you can be trained to be the best therapist for your child. And I would really try to take advantage of that right now, because the more training you receive, the easier it will be to manage things. And again, going back to the routine, I think setting a routine is probably the best way to control anxieties, because, you know, it's all really about knowing what comes next. And that helps our kids with their anxieties. Now, another comment, sorry, Shannon, am I going on too long?
No, you're fine. But I do have some questions when I thought you were taking a pause, but you go right ahead. What you have to say is more important than anything I ever thought.
No, not at all, not at all. So, but what I was going to say is that, you know, one of the things I think that's important is that this is not a normal situation we're in. This is an emergency situation. And in emergency situations like this, our goals have to change. So nobody should really have a goal right now that their child is going to be acquiring new skills, at least not at the same rate that they were before. Because really what happens in a time like this is that you just want to maintain sort of the things that have been learned before. If we start right now placing too much demand on our kids, the anxiety will increase, the challenging behaviors will increase, everything will sort of like blow up. And this is not the right time because it's not a controlled environment. Our kids are already anxious because their routines have changed. They don't have access to their therapists. They have much less access to the folks that they would work with every day, their OTs, their speech, their all the instruction, right? And so you definitely want to increase their reinforcers and decrease the demands. So in other words, you know, pick your battles new now, a whole set of new things. Like, you know, is it really, really important to worry about something like, oh, my child spent 2 hours watching TV yesterday? Under normal circumstances, I would say, yes, you want to probably reduce that. But under these circumstances, I don't think that's something you need to really worry about. So every family is different, but what I'm basically saying is reduce the expectations you have right now and increase the rewards, because we all kind of need that.
Okay. And so what I get from that is that and I started the show by saying we're throwing away the old rule book, that we really need to pick our battles here, and that everybody needs extra comfort time and extra reinforcers, which is kind of going to go into what my next question is, that let's see if I can bring up the actual wording of it here. That we've got one of our viewers who says, we love our card family. My little is home doing therapy right now, but she says, I wish my spouse was more supportive. I am the only care. Tough that he is here, but not really helping. And we've been hearing this from a lot of our parents, that, you know, when we're lucky enough that there are two parents in the home and everybody is home now, that we're starting to see where some of the cracks in our foundation were, Dr. Granpeesheh, that maybe one of the, and I don't want to always assume that it's the dad, but a lot of times it's the dad who has been out working really hard and letting mom be the project manager for autism. But now that we're home, everybody's sort of seeing the disparity. How can we get the dads, how can we utilize this opportunity and get the dads even a smidge more involved in what our kids are doing?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think normally, I think there's two aspects to that. One is that, as you said, the dads, they might not know that, you know, what tasks you would like them to engage in. And then secondly, they might not know how to engage in those tasks. So those are two separate things. You know, one of the things I did when this whole thing hit us beginning of last week, and I realized we really should not be going out whenever possible. And I have my husband and my adult kids here, and they are all wonderful, wonderful people. And we essentially at the beginning of the week sat down and said, who's going to do what? Like, let's divide the chores. And so I think that is step one, where you might need to sit with your spouse and say, make a list of all the things you need to do, not just for your child who's on the spectrum, but I would suggest you make a list of everything you need to do that you didn't have to do before, you know, around the house or whatever else it is, because of course we have less access to those who were helping us before. So make a full list and sit down with your spouse, and maybe if you have older children, with them as well, and say who's going to do which task. So it's a matter of knowing how to do the task. And I think that is where, you know, if you ask your husband, let's say, or wife to participate and be part of, let's say, a certain percentage of your child's program, then it becomes very necessary for them to learn some of the basic skills of how to do ABA. And as you said, first of all, you have access to IBT. As a card parent, you can have access to as much training as you'd like. We have thousands of lessons on IBT, and they are free to you. So as a card parent, you can access anything you'd like to get from IBT. You just have to tell your supervisor. And then secondly, your supervisor, your BCBA, has tons of hours available for parent training. I mean, we are actually asking for more hours of parent training right now from our payers and getting it very, very free. I mean, they are very excited for us to do more parent training. So please take advantage of this opportunity and get your husband to receive the parent training. It's we do it live. Your supervisor would be the one who would be providing all of that training to your husband. And let me tell you, it's a wonderful thing to do right now.
Absolutely. I think that there's a normal part of this. I'm just getting my camera back up, where I love, a friend of mine used to do a presentation where she and her husband would talk about the work of autism, the care of autism. And it was a very funny presentation that they would do, but they literally, this is where I got the idea of calling it the project manager. They talked about the fact that one person becomes the project manager, but how important it is to bring that other person in. I think that there's a certain amount of, even though, it's 2020, I think we get into these roles in our existence, whether we have a kid with autism or not, where the guy maybe takes out the trash, or maybe the woman takes out the trash, but then that becomes their role forever. Like you can't rewrite it. Like we're all stuck in 1954. And that it's times like this, when something like this happens, that, as Dr. Granpeesheh says, it can be the thorn in all of our side, or it can be an opportunity to learn things, to do things in a different way. And I can tell you from firsthand experience that parent training, I think a lot of us are so busy that we think, oh, I just don't have time for it. And in fact, CARD has renamed it caregiver collaboration, because I think that's a more accurate term for what it is, that it's an opportunity for you to sit with either your BCBA or someone high up on your staff and to say, here's the thing that I don't know how to do, and have them walk you through it. And we may have thought we didn't have time for it 2 weeks ago, but we probably have time for it now. And to say to your spouse, hey, I need you to do this, and be very appreciative and reward them for it. I gotta be honest with you, that I think that the first response is going to be like, no, right? Because we all feel a little bit, I don't know, there's something about it, Dr. Granpeesheh, that's humbling. Like, I know that I thought that when my child came out of the womb, that I was supposed to know everything about how to take care of him. And it was very humbling to me when, as an autism mom, I didn't know how to. I felt stupid. I felt like these younger, prettier people were smarter than I was, that maybe they were better parents to my child than I was. It was very, very humbling. So I think we just all have to acknowledge that, own it, and say, this doesn't necessarily feel great to say that I need some help and support with this, but if we can get past that to get to the help, we feel better. It's very empowering. And I know at a certain point, we had to do that with my husband, where I had to be in cahoots with my supervisor and say to her, I need help because he's not learning it. And it was so frustrating for me. And I didn't want it to be the thing that came between us as a couple. And I said, I need your help. And she said, then you have to help us. You have to not step in every time, Shannon. You have to be silent sometimes and let him have to. So together we did that. And there were times when he would do that, what we now call the caregiver collaboration. And what that resulted in is that I have a husband who has a really good relationship with his son. And that's a thing you guys don't want to miss out on. And here we are, we're in that moment. In all likelihood, you have the funding for it. You just have to tell your husband, oh no, even if you have to lie and say they're requiring it, like these things.
No, absolutely.
Okay, did you want to say something about that, or have another question? Yeah.
Just one quick final comment on that is that another thing you need to tell your husband is that We have actual data. We have published on the fact that the children whose parents both are involved more tend to do better overall. They learn faster, they learn more skills, they maintain skills better, they generalize skills better. And so, I mean, that is, if anything, that should be motivation for your spouse to get involved.
Wonderful. A parent says, I have taught my 4-year-old to make coffee using the Keurig. She's his little assistant, which I absolutely love. And then said, isn't that funny? Being home with my little, what reinforces his behavior, since I am home, he is manding his needs to me more because I am home more than normal. What a wonderful, wonderful thing. You see, there are some advantages to this. And if we start taking advantage of all the advantages, we will see that this is going to end. This is not going to be forever. We all need to keep reminding ourselves of that. But if there are things to be taken advantage of in this time period, man, jump on that. But I love that he's manding more. And it's, you know, as you were saying, the research shows very clearly that we've always said that the 3 here on the show, we've talked about the 3 keys to success. One is access to opportunity to be able to do things. And when we are there and giving them more opportunities to mand, right? What a fabulous thing. Having a BCBA on your case who's helping to drive in the right direction, which, you know, I hope that all of you have access to that. And if you don't, that you get access to that, but our card parents do. And then the third one is that parent involvement that you were talking about, that it really does make a difference. Okay, I've got a question that came in on the live feature. I have an 8-year-old who is nonverbal with an A. Now that we have switched to the at home learning, he is yelling whenever the video comes on. Please help. And I know a lot of parents are struggling with nonverbal kids, that this video modeling that the schools are doing is a little on the rough side.
Is that the video that they're referring to? Is the from what the school is providing right now?
Yes, that it seems like to me. And if they want to clarify, they can. But to me, that's how I'm reading it, Dr. Graham-Piché.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's unfortunate because the schools are not doing, honestly, a very good job right now, I think, of kind of getting support and help to our kids on the spectrum. You know, we are what's classified as a non-public agency. So we are able to, when a school district cannot provide appropriate services, they will contract with us as one of the providers who can provide related services, ABA. I don't know how it is right now. I mean, I do know that districts, all of the districts are going to be receiving their state funding. Usually districts are, your school doesn't get paid unless your child is in school, but due to the current emergency, they will be paid. And so as a result of that, the general guidance that has come down from the Department of Education, and now this is state by state, but I'll quote California. Most of the departments of education are saying that all ABA providers, for example, or speech or OT, should try their best to resume services or continue services, because in some time in the future, they will be paid for this. So now in your case, you had an aide who is an employee of the school district, I assume. I don't know if, since school is kind of happening, it's, you know, you're getting these videos and so on. If I were you, I would actually try to call for an IEP. I would say I need a virtual IEP to happen because this mode of instruction is not working for my child. And I need additional related services or some other, let them solve it for you. It is their responsibility to offer you more services if this particular type of service is not working. One of the things they could do is they could increase, or they could give you related services, which is ABA, and then you would get a behaviorist or a behavioral intervention provider to come to your home. See, as an educational provider like schools, they're not really allowed to be sending aides or teachers to your home because of all of the shelter at home laws. But ABA providers are exempt from those shelter at home laws because we are healthcare providers. So if your school funds related services for you, you should be able to get someone who can come to your home and help. But it all starts with asking for an IEP.
Wonderful. And we heard from Bonnie Yates on Monday that the schools are still holding IEPs. They're doing them online. You can ask for one.
Great.
I also want to point out that at the end of last week, I've lost all track of time. I did a blog of 101 things that you can do with your kiddos. I have so many resources that I need to add to it because people have been sending things to me, but I think we were up to 106 when I last left off, and I've got at least 30 more to add. But if you go to that list, and we've been featuring it on our Facebook page, there are a bunch of resources for kiddos, because while you're waiting for them to get their ducks in a row for ABA and to do the IEP, you don't want to be wasting time, right? And if the method that they're giving you, let's remember, I'm a former school teacher here. Let's remember that the teachers they had 7 minutes notice that their classes were going to go online, and for a lot of them, they're having to shift their modality. And the first thing that they're going to do is shift it for the kiddos who, don't need any extra support. This is the rude reality of our lives, right? And as parents, we need to be proactive and be doing other things. On that list, you'll find there are a bunch of things that you could be doing with your kiddo, but I want to head that off by saying if your child is nonverbal, that one of the best resources that I know of out there is a wonderful app that was put out by CARD that's called Camp Discovery. Now, this is not for kids who are older and verbal, because it's really about building language skills, expressive and receptive language skills for language learners. But it's a free app. It is something that you can set up on your child's Android or iPad and have them working on that. There's also one of my other favorite resources. Look up your local PBS provider, the public broadcasting system provider, because in each little pocket, they have really stepped it up. They're offering online curriculum that is in alignment with your child's age, but they're doing it in a very PBS kind of Sesame Street, really user-friendly kind of way. And even if there are, educational programs like Blue's Clues and things like that, that are great to engage our kids so that it's not just mindless watching television, it's educational program, but they specifically for PBS, they have different channels here in Los Angeles that if your child is ages, 3 to kindergarten, you watch one channel, and that each channel is showing just educational programming, which is super fun. So, I totally agree with Dr. Granpeesheh, call an IEP meeting, but don't wait for everything else. Get Camp Discovery and start with that, but then check out your PBS and check out the blog to see other things. Like one of the things I love, all these museums and zoos and places like that have put virtual field trips available. And you don't have to have the little virtual glasses to do it. It's just more fun if you do. But you can very quickly put together a thing and say, today we're going on a field trip to, the Beijing Zoo. I mean, places that you and I maybe never thought we would go with our kids, you can go to right now today with great things to do. Have you seen, Dr. Granpeesheh, that one of the things they're doing at the zoos is that they're taking the animals out of their cages and allowing them to go through the zoo and visit the other animals? I'm loving the penguins' reactions to seeing the meerkats. I mean, just like puts me out. I just can't even.
Oh, I haven't seen that. Seen that. How awesome.
Or the elephants getting to go and watch the giraffes. I mean, it just, I can't hardly stand it. The way nature is reacting to this emergency is a lesson for all of us. The fact that dolphins are now swimming through the canals in Venice, and the swans have returned, and the color of the water, and it's only been a couple of weeks. We need to be paying attention. to what the environment is telling us. But what a great, I know I digress, but what a great way for your kiddos to be able to experience things that you would not have had the time to do before. And you can do it all from your living room, which I absolutely love. Okay, the next question, what do you recommend for a high functioning teen during the COVID self-quarantine? I know that there are a lot, I've been talking to some parents and you know, while there seems to be a plethora of things for kids that are younger, the older parents are a little bit concerned because especially it seems like a lot of them are just like, well, that's great. I didn't like socializing anyway, so I'll just curl up in a cave. We had one parent the other day who said, my kid thinks that my non-social kid thinks this is the greatest thing that ever happened. And I was like, great, I don't have to deal with all of that. So what do you recommend for these older kids, Dr. Granpeesheh?
A lot of different things, Shannon. First of all, you know, there's a program at UCLA called Peers, and they have several different age groups. One age group is adolescents or teens, and several years ago they provided us training in the Peers model, and actually there's a manual for adolescents, and I would say you have to be relatively high functioning to benefit from this, but they have not discontinued. In fact, when they gave us their manual, we then wrote up a telehealth version of it. And the funny thing is, Shannon, we didn't do that right now. We did that several years ago because, of course, we have sites all over the country, clinics, and we wanted to do this program with our teens who are in other parts of the country. So we then started to do this telehealth social program. It's a peer-based social program, and it is awesome. And then recently, when this happened, the Peers Clinic at UCLA reached out to us and said, didn't you guys do this via telehealth? Can you send us your manual on how to do our program on telehealth? So we sent it back to them, and they are now using it as well. And to show you what a small world it is, Shannon, as you know, my oldest daughter got her master's at UCLA, and she actually works at the Peers Clinic. And so part of what I see her doing at home is running those groups online. And they're very cool. I would really recommend, if you're a CARD family, you should ask your supervisor about running a peers program. If you're not a CARD family, you might want to reach out to UCLA Peer Clinic and enroll there. The programs are excellent. They have, just like we are doing right now, they have social skills groups, and you know, all the individuals are basically on screen, and there's moderators and facilitators and folks that are helping the communication. Now, on top of that, they also listed many online social places. And as long as you are a little cautious about it and you check those places out first yourself, there is a lot of social activity going online for high functioning individuals, adolescents on the spectrum. It's like, you know, a lot of there's games that are happening, but there's also just social places like coffee and socialize, or, you know, let's talk about whatever our feelings at this time. And then there's a moderator who assists with making sure that all the questions are answered, similar to this type of thing that we're doing here, but with many more individuals on the screen. So Shannon, we do have a list of all of those social locations. I did send it to the clinical team at CARD, and perhaps that's something that we want to share with our audience. Again, also on there's tons of activities for high functioning teens that could be done just on the social arena.
Wonderful. I'd love to get that list, and maybe we could do a part of a show just about that. Maybe either you or somebody else could, you know, present on that. I'd love to include that, because you know, you've talked before about the fact that the world of technology, like, not only has the world changed, but, you know, in some cases it's changing in a way that's better for our kids' social lives. And this, you know, making sure, taking advantage, which is, I think, our theme for this hour, is that if we have to be doing this, let's take advantage. Teaching our kids to be social online in this way, much the way that you and I are doing right now, might be easier for them than the doing face-to-face. This could be a great step up to really help them to be able to do the social things. And so I think we should definitely talk more about that. Now, we did have somebody who wrote in a question on YouTube that I want to make sure I get to. Can women with autism have ADD rather than ADHD? And I sort of love this question because, you know, the H is the hyperactive thing. And my friends would always say, you know, I'm not sure. Sometimes my attention span seems to be not what I would like it to be, but is that still a thing? And is it something that women on the spectrum are more likely to have, ADD?
So there's no correlation with gender with the ADD or ADHD diagnosis. The diagnosis used to be called ADD and then it was changed to ADHD, but the real way that you diagnose this is it actually divides into three types. One is, and they're all called ADHD, but there's three types. One of them is the hyperactive type, and the other one is the impulsive type, and the third is the combined. So you certainly can have ADHD without the hyperactivity portion. I think the reason that it's all called ADHD is because even if you are physically not hyperactive, your mind might be racing. But nevertheless, there's a series of symptoms, and you can even look this up online. You can look up the ADHD diagnostic criteria, and they're all listed there, and it tells you very specific. You just answer yes or no, and then it will tell you very specifically what type you have. Whether it is the impulsive, the hyperactive, or both. Okay,
and that's very helpful because I did not realize that. And I think a lot of times people confuse that because we all get a little scattered. And especially during this emergency when there's been so much going on, I think I've been hearing a lot of people saying like, oh, it's very hard for me to concentrate right now.
Yeah.
And I think we should, you know, maybe spend a second talking about the fact that that is not something that, you know, in these difficult times, having difficulty concentrating does not qualify us for a diagnosis of ADHD. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think what it is, Shannon, is that we're all on hyper alert mode, right? We're all just adjusting to a whole new thing. And also, we're all kind of very distractible simply because there's a lot to pay attention to. Like from day to day, it's not like it's a new routine, right? When you go to a new location, new office, new job, new environment, new school, whatever it is, you have to pay more attention to all the environmental criteria around you. So, for example, all of us at home, we're adjusting to how to learn how to work on Zoom. Everybody's just working online now. So you have to learn all those new things. You have to figure out all the environmental factors that will now make your new life function. So because of that, we're all focused on a million things we didn't have to worry about before. And so we are distractible. As I always say, my hard drive is full. So it's kind of like very hard to pay attention to everything and remember everything. Because we're just like thinking about a million things at the same time that are all new. At the same time, when you have anxiety, it just exacerbates everything, right? Because your mind does race during anxiety, and we all have a heightened level of anxiety. Right now, there's a lot of discussion about the secondary effects of COVID-19. Which are already indicating an increase in anxiety disorders, increase in depression. Obviously this is now going to also result in increased use of some medications that are necessary. I mean, things are, it's the entire world. So we're going to have different things going on. And really, I think it's just everyone needs to kind of realize that it's probably not the right time to be looking for a new diagnosis. If you didn't have symptoms like this before, just wait a little bit, things will settle down. I mean, I'm looking at it, and I don't know if I'm right or wrong, honestly, but I'm kind of, I have to give myself goals or just, ends, I guess, to certain things. And I'm thinking of this as an 8-week sort of run, and us being in the second week right now. So really, that kind of gives me a sense of calm a little bit, because it at least gives me an end date where I hope that by that point, things will at least begin to come back to normal.
Yeah, absolutely. I should say at this point that, because we're running out of time here, but I want to make sure that I mention that on Friday, we're having Vince Redmond on the show. He's a licensed marriage and family therapist, and he's going to be talking specifically about anxiety and things that we can all be doing to ratchet the anxiety down. And I know if you're a CARD family, we're doing PTA calls every afternoon at 4 o'clock Pacific time. And Vince was on yesterday and taught us all a breathing technique, which was really good. I'm going to make him do that for all of you on Friday. And it just, it's one of those things we talk on the show here about mindfulness, and we're going to be doing our mindfulness moment tomorrow, but you forget sometimes to breathe. And so we're going to be practicing that every day, and especially with Vince with us on Friday. And I do want to say,
Shannon,
yes.
Shannon, real quickly, if you have Vince on your show on Friday, just know that Thursday is his birthday.
I did not know that. All right. Well, we'll do a shout out for him on tomorrow and on Friday. I should say that tomorrow on Thursday, we have 2 amazing guests here on Autism Live. One of them is a pediatric neurologist who's going to be talking specifically about how things that we should know about COVID and making us aware of that. And then we're also going to have Evelyn Kung, the clinical director of CARD, with us. You can hear my dog barking. Someone's delivering something. I don't know what. That is my sweet dog who sounds vicious. But anyway, that's going to be tomorrow. And Evelyn Kung will be here tomorrow answering questions. So that'll be really wonderful. And then again, on Friday, we'll have Vince Redmond. And can you hear my husband try to calm her down? I don't know what you could hear.
That's okay.
It sounds like a UPS man is being eaten alive. And it may not be. But anyway, we're also going to have Leah Hirschfeld back with us on Friday, talking about research and things that are really helpful to us. And of course, Nancy Alspaw Jackson will be joining us for that, for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. But we are officially out of time here. Dr. Grant-Pichet, thank you so much for being such an amazing leader. And thank you for taking the time to be here. I know we're still working out this format. And so I know it's a little frustrating for everybody. We're getting there. We're getting closer. Traven's almost got it. We're going to keep working until we have it. But we're not going to go away in the meantime. We're going to be here in whatever capacity we can. So thank you, Dr. Grant-Pichet. Thank you to all of you. We'll be back tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good and welcome Dr. Golla to the show right now. She's been patiently waiting. There she is. And don't you look stunning? You look absolutely beautiful. What's that about? A gorgeous pediatric neurologist. That's craziness. And wonderful to have you here. And thrilled to have, let's talk a little bit first. Tell them about you. Tell our viewers about you and what it is that you do, because you're amazing.
Thank you, Shannon. Thanks again. This is my second time on the show. I was here sometime in August last year. I'm happy to be back here during the most critical period. My name is Sailaja Golla. I'm a pediatric neurologist, and I have an additional qualification in autism and neurodevelopmental disorders, and that's what I do. My clinics are filled with 70 to 80% of them are autism kids under 18 years. I do see some adults as well on the spectrum, but mostly it's kids.
And where are you located?
Dallas, Texas.
That's right. I knew it was someplace that I have been that I was like, oh, I'm gonna get to come and see you at some point. I was supposed to be there in January and my kid got the flu, so that did not happen. But sometime in the future, I'm gonna be there and have an opportunity to see you.
Yes,
I've lost all of my screens. So Dr. Golla, a very interesting time that we live in, and I can't get any of my documents to work, but I know that there are some very specific things that you wanted to talk to us about to help us with our kiddos right now with this COVID-19 emergency. What can you share with us?
This is a very critical period. A lot of questions. How do we deal with autism kids, specifically when the schools are closed, they're home, no access to much of therapies. And Shannon, you were just talking about ABA and emphasizing the importance. Yes, having a good therapist does play. A lot of our kids do get ABA like full time, especially the younger age group. And this is really tough, not just on autism community and the patients, but also on the caretakers. They're strongly affected. What do we do? How do we keep them in the routine? Because they're so much used to the routine, and how do we get through? But most importantly, I think I would like to cover from a medical perspective, what we need to be aware or be extra cautious, specifically with kids and autism kids. One strong thing I recommend is hand washing, which is about 20 seconds. And I do tell my kids specifically, hey, how do we have them wash their hands for 20 seconds? They can sing a song like a happy birthday song or a twinkle twinkle song, and mom can sing with them. It's very important. And some of our kids have these odd repetitive behaviors like either flapping, spinning, or touching the face often. So it's very important to see, avoid that. I know we can't put gloves all the time, but if they can wash and sanitize their hands, and maybe on those kids who are used to having those stereotypes of face touching, maybe having gloves on them would be beneficial as well. I also want to stretch the fact that I know we are not able to see the kids face to face or access to providers face to face. But a lot of us, including doctors, therapists, have access to what is called as televisits. And I think the government just passed the rule that you could do interstate visits. So for example, I can see a kid from California through a televisit, through the video conferencing, and the insurance will be covered and we can take care of it. So there is access to providers, not just within your state, but also throughout the country through this crisis.
And Dr. Golla, and I'm not saying it right. I say it Golla?
Golla, you got it perfect. That's good.
Okay. So to some extent, we had telehealth before in some states and in some circumstances, but my understanding and along with what you were just saying is that the things that were preventing us from doing it widely, that a lot of those just have been waved out of the way now, right? So that there's more telehealth than ever before. So for instance, you were saying that you are able to talk to somebody in California. So if a parent is watching and saying, hey, I've never had the opportunity to take advantage of this before, how would they contact you? What would they do to start telehealth with you during this time?
Yes, they just need to call my office and we'll help them set it up. They need to have access to internet or email. And if they don't have that, we can still do it via regular phone. So there's multiple avenues and multiple ways to do it. And most insurances, including Medicaid, is now covered and there is no interstate restrictions at all.
That's pretty amazing. So what is the number for your office, if you don't mind my asking?
Yes, definitely. I work for Texas Institute for Neurological Disorders. And I will also share my website with you. And the number is, whenever you're ready, can I go ahead?
Yeah, you can go ahead and tell us.
Yes, it's 1-844-754-8463. Yeah, 754-8463.
8463?
844, and I'm just typing it in as well and sending it right over to you.
Okay, but I think I've got 844-754-8463. Is that correct?
8643.
8643. See, you can see I'm slightly dyslexic with numbers. Okay, I've got that written down. And hopefully, so again, 844-754-8643 for those of you who wanted to reach out to her during this time and to do telehealth. Telehealth is something that, you know, we just in the last couple of years have seen the rise of this, and it's been helping so many families that are in faraway areas. And more people were using this. Parents were finding this was a little bit easier to do some telehealth things because, you know, if you're at work and your child's at school and you're having to have an appointment that's necessary for your child and not having to drive, you know, it's been a really beneficial thing. But the fact that the groundwork had been laid for this emergency, it's now become the mode that we all are relying on. So take advantage of it. This is an opportunity where you couldn't last week in some states reach out to the doctor and have a discussion about pediatric neurology. Now you can. And so let's take just a couple of minutes to talk about like what kinds of things you treat and that, you know, and that might be helpful during this emergency.
Yes. So it's a little challenging. It is a little different from a face-to-face visit, but we could literally do most of the things we do on a face-to-face visit. So the family calls in, we set up an appointment, and hey, it could be a new patient or a follow-up for medications or whatnot. If it's follow-up, it's much easier. You know the kid from before and you have established that rapport with them, and just adjusting the medications or ordering new tests, and it's as easy as that. But when it's a new child coming in for a new diagnosis or questions, it's a little more challenging, but it's not impossible at all. And the televisit is not just telephone, just to emphasize, it's a video audio visit. So you could see me and I could see the child, I could see the family in their home environment. So we'll basically be doing the same things we do in the clinic visit, like a thorough history, an exam, whatever we can. So I can observe the child walk, play with toys, and I do use some gadgets via video to check their tracking or eye contact or speech, ask them some questions, and it's almost equal to a video visit. And it's pretty thorough. It might be like an hour to 2 hours, depending on the complexity. That's the evaluation. Once the evaluation is done, we typically do some tests. For example, I do offer genetic testing in the clinic, which is not blood, which is done by a swab to look for causes of autism. And for that, with the corona crisis, we are sending out kits home to families who need it. So the mom or dad can just swab at home and just drop it in a FedEx location. So what I'm trying to say is we could do the blood work, the genetic testing, whatever is needed, as much as we can from a home setting, and still take care of all the needs. So they do get appropriate care and therapies. And I also hear that a lot of ABA therapists, BCBS are trying to do some communication via tele. I know it's restricted, but something is still better than nothing. So we do have providers working, and I would definitely suggest families to stay home and not rush into the clinic or go to the hospital unless there is an emergency. You could do everything from medications to blood work, to talking to your doctor. And again, with this, there is more anxiety, more nervousness, not just to the kid, but also to the adults and caregivers taking care of them. But we are here to support you, and we are available even for weekend visits. Given the crisis, we know that parents are working. So I see kids on weekends, evenings, after hours, through this crisis to get through all of us as a team.
Wonderful. And so I love all of this advice. We all need to be making the commitment to stay home and to realize that there are things in place to help even, the beginnings of, doing the swab test and all of that. You can do that from home. Are there any other piece of advice that you want us to be looking out for as we move along through this crisis? And is there anything we should be looking for in our kids, or to stay ahead of the curve, so to speak?
Yes. So I definitely stretch the point of prevention, as we do not have a treatment as of today. So prevention is the treatment, and this is something we can prevent. So I tell all my kids and adults 5 golden tips. Wash your hands, like we discussed. Social distancing, which is very important. Like last week, I had a kid, but how does a kid with autism understand the point of social distancing? He was licking all of us, licking his mom, and the tables in the clinic and so on. So social distancing is very important. 6 feet is what they say. But there are a lot of things you can do while social distancing. You could walk in the park, walk with a dog, make sure you clean the doorknobs, computers, cell phones, keyboards. These are some things kids with autism are highly fascinated towards. So you could you should probably make sure that we do repetitive cleaning of the doorknobs and whatever the kids get their hand on at home or a daycare. Again, it's quite challenging for parents who are working to take care of the kids at home. But there are, again, services available. Try to find a friend or another parent who can take care of their kid while they're at work. And I would not say it's as simple as a flu. I don't want us to panic either, because there's a huge panic going on among everyone that what's happening. So it's not as simple as flu. It's more dangerous. But as far as we take the preventions, we should be good. And this does not affect kids as seriously. There are maybe a couple of kids diagnosed throughout the country. And most of it is usually when they're immunosuppressed or have some kind of pre-existing condition. So kids can be carriers. They can pass it on to their grandparents or the other sick people or the people who are more prone to that, like the immunocompressed. So I would be careful, but kids usually have very mild symptoms. So if you see a child has a cold or a cough or a mild fever, please call your doctor. Try avoid going to the emergency room, call your doctor so they could advise you on where to go and how to get it tested, because kids can be what you call as oligosymptomatic, or very few symptoms compared to the adults or the older people.
Thank you so much for all of that advice. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but I want to make sure that we give everybody your phone number again at the clinic is 8643. I'm going to say it again. They're asking me to start my video. There we go. 844-754-8643. So 844-754-8643. Thank you so much for being with us. We've enjoyed having you back on the show.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Stay safe.
Yes, you too. Wonderful. Thank you. So great, you guys. Glad that we could share that information. And now we're going to welcome to the show our other guest. Evelyn Kung is joining us again today. And she is amazing, has been a regular on the show. There she is. Hello. And thrilled to have you. I feel like I just barely left you. Because she and I were on a call together with parents last night. In fact, if I can pull it up here, we had a call after we had somebody, you had started to answer a question on the call last night, Evelyn, and my computer is just being so difficult. And then you left and there was a second part to the question and I gave them the choice. I said that we could either answer it on the show here or tomorrow. And they said, hey, yeah, answer it on Autism Live tomorrow. So I want to share, first of all, with everyone that Evelyn Kung is amazing. And can I tell you that so many people were saying that about you behind your back last night. The thing that we were on last night, CARD is doing, we have a parent organization at CARD. We call it the PTA. It's the Parents That Are Truly Amazing. It's our parent organization at CARD. And every afternoon at 4 o'clock, we're doing a webinar just for those folks. I know you're probably chartreuse with envy, but it is one of the perks of being a CARD parent. And Evelyn was on that call with parents last night. So the question started, my son will on purpose state the wrong answer, and then the therapists have to ask the question again, only then he will answer correctly. This is unnecessarily giving him attention as he is smiling when he is giving the wrong answers. When he doesn't know, then he does not smile, then I know he really does not know the answer. And Evelyn addressed that part of the question, but then they went on to add, he is doing this with his school therapist. I'm observing this when all his therapies are currently at home virtually and wanting to know how to handle it. And how do we address it for the school perspective for the child's study team? That's the part that they're wanting to know. I think a lot of us are learning a lot of things that we didn't know about our kids because our kids were at school and nobody was telling us, right? So this parent is seeing this now with the schooling and wants some advice. How does he talk to the school team so that they will know what to do, Evelyn?
So this is actually a great one in the sense that teachers care if kids answer or don't answer correctly. So sometimes there's interventions or behaviors that the parents are concerned about, but maybe the school doesn't take as seriously. This one, the schools take seriously because they do need to find out, like, does this kid know this information or not? So this is a great time. So one of the things I had said about at home was, if you're going to stop this behavior, you have to get everybody on one behavior intervention plan where everybody's going to respond the exact same way, because this child is getting this access that's keeping the behavior where maybe everybody at home is aware that he wants that second question, but everybody at school is not. So then the behavior just never goes away in either setting because it's just getting reinforced somewhere. And so this is a good time to sit down with the school staff and the teacher and any of the people working with him directly one-on-one and any resource speech, everybody has to be on board, and you have your BCBA or whoever is writing your behavior intervention plan and really give them the definition of what it looks like, what happens, and all the information that you just shared. And then also they just need to create a plan that basically says, you know, we're not going to ask the question a different, we're not going to ask the question again the second time, because that's what he's seeking. And so maybe what you're doing instead is moving on to the next question, or maybe going on and changing the form of the question that you're asking and still getting the same information. But it's going to require the child to work. And then when he does answer on the first try, the reinforcement for that first response needs to be much bigger than any other thing, because he has to know this is what people want from me. They are much happier. They will give me a ton more attention. They will give me a lot of great things that I love if I answer on the first try. So that's, you know, work with your BCBA, really sit there and plan it all out. You have to get everyone on the same page though. It does not work if one person is answering intermittently, because if you want a behavior to stay around, all the research shows that that's the way to get the behavior to stay, is that intermittent reinforcement where it just happens once in a while.
Okay, I am trying to get back to all of, I got, so my internet is just being weird for me today. So I definitely want to address, we've got a mom on YouTube today who is saying potty training, please help me. Been trying since he was 2, he will be 4 in October. He is not diagnosed. She says, but I'm almost positive he is on the spectrum. I feel like I've tried everything. He does not even like sitting on the potty. The chat was giving her a little bit of trouble, but she says that he freaks and does not want to sit on the potty. I do want to say that we've got a video that's going to be coming out probably next week, where I've got 2 experts who go through the entire Fox and Azrin, so that will be available for you next week. But maybe Evelyn, if you want to give her a quick, because that's probably not till next week. That video is being edited right now.
Well, I was going to say, if you've tried a lot, I actually need to find out what you have tried. And that's because that really matters. The Fox and Azrin method, it totally works. It's just that it takes longer for kids that have been able to escape previous potty training sessions. So it's like, oh, you've tried this before. You've made me sit here for days, and they get that. So that when you start to try it again, they will fight twice as hard, 5 times as hard, 100 times as hard, and they will wait you out. So it's important that if you're going to commit to toilet training, and you know, I recommend that next week you look at that video, because that video, those people are great who are doing it. And really, when you commit to potty training, you have to commit totally, where you're going to say, I'm not giving up. I'm going to continue on this path. And basically it becomes a battle of the wills of whether the kid can hold out longer or whether the parents can hold out longer. So that might mean that you're going to be changing your activities. That might be changing your schedule, so that when you start the whole process, you're going to commit to it and stay with it, even if it takes you 2 or 3 weeks of sitting in the toilet every single day. There is another issue though, is you have to decide, is there something about sitting on the toilet that he doesn't like? You know, the whole concept of toilet training, you know, just in typical development, is that the kid has all the control. And that's completely true. There's very little things that we can do to make them go. In our potty training here, we always say, give the kids salty food so they'll drink more water. So then the process of them having to pee actually happens more. But that only, you know, that's only a little bit control. The kid has all the control. But I was going to go back to say that if he doesn't like to sit, maybe you only want to provide a reinforcer for him where that's the only time he has access is sitting on the toilet. And at the beginning, it might be in his diapers or in his underwear, and it's not a big deal. He might be sitting there. We've had families where the toilet is so aversive for the kid, they will fight screaming to sit there because they connect it to being made to sit there. But then there are also kids who don't like the feeling of the toilet. So I always tell the parents, you know, the little soft and squishy toilet seats that you can put in, you know, the inserts that you put into the toilet that make it soft. And, you know, if you can find something like that that goes in, that's they like, you know, Sesame Street does a ton of them. And I've had plenty of kids who love Ernie who will sit on the toilet if Ernie's in there. And, you know, if you can find any of those things that make it more motivated to be sitting there, that's great. Many of our families, you know, our kids love devices or books or certain things like that. And we'll just say the only time they get access is if they're sitting on the toilet. And so there is that process of, hey, just sit here. We're not asking you to do anything, but just sit here and get used to it, so that he starts to just acclimate that it's okay to sit. Then you know that you got past at least, you know, it's not the feeling or the sensory aspect of the toilet seat that is making him run. And then there's a lot of fun things that we've done. There's kids who, you know, we started cutting their diapers at the bottom. So they're sitting and, you know, slowly we're actually to the point of where we've cut the whole diaper, but maybe on the waist it's still on, but the rest of it is, and they're actually peeing and having bowel movements in the toilet. And actually, the first time it actually happens, they're in shock that it happens. And then it becomes kind of fun because it's a little cause and effect thing. But there's a lot of things that you can try and encourage you to really watch that video. That's great. Fox and aspirin, it works. If you've tried really hard though, it's not gonna happen in 2 or 3 days or in a week. It's gonna be a lot longer if you've tried many, many times, because the kids know, oh, you guys tried this with me, you know, however long ago. And, you know, basically you did it for 7 days and I waited 7 days and fought and screamed 7 days. And eventually you stopped making me sit here. If they have that kind of behavioral history, it's going to take a lot longer. So you just need to be patient and don't start it until you are sure that you can clear your schedule and be able to follow through for, let's say, a month or 2. And then, you know, hopefully it won't take that long, but I've seen it take a long time for the kids where the families have attempted to toilet train and get up many times.
And I just want to throw in there as a parent that I know one of my biggest concerns when my child was diagnosed and was not yet potty trained, it's like the first little milestone that you see all the other kids and we start to worry because you hear the stories of the kids who are 15 years old and in diapers. But as soon as I met people in the ABA community, I was fascinated by how they were about potty training, because as parents, we're all like, oh my gosh, will he ever be potty trained? And the ABA professionals are like, oh yeah, no, we've cracked that code. Oh no, we have that. That won't be a problem. And the parents are all like, no, my child's on the spectrum. It might be a problem. And the ABA professionals are like, oh, no. We know what to do. It just takes longer with some kids, but we know for sure what to do. Your child will be potty trained. And that confidence, yes, Evelyn.
I have one thing, sorry.
Go ahead.
At CARD, we actually will not do potty training until we have full compliance from the child. What full compliance means is if I say come here and they see something exciting, they're still going to come no matter how much they want to run the other way to, and in any setting. If you get compliance across all environments and with the people, doing potty training is not, it's one less fight that you have to do because they know that they need to do this.
And can I just say, because we've been talking about ABA and the difference between good ABA and whatever else people do, that because my child did this with CARD, was potty trained by CARD, and they had compliance. And the way they went about getting compliance was that they were the funnest thing happening, that they were more fun than anything else. Nobody punished him into complying ever. That never happened, ever. So they make it super fun and reinforcing. And we make ourselves as parents super fun and reinforcing so that our kiddos want to listen to us and that they realize that, hey, when, mom keeps me safe. And when mom says, come here, it's because there's something good to come for. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to make sure and say that. But more than anything, because I know you're worried about the potty training, it's going to happen. It's going to be okay. And it's going to happen with your kiddo. And you'll see on this video, we filmed it before all this COVID thing. And you'll see that, these two professionals talk about the fact that, in their lives, they have not yet met the individual that the experts couldn't help with potty training. So across the board, your child will not be the first child that can, it's just going to take a little bit of time, and you got to follow the Fox and Azrin steps, and the child has to be ready. That's the other thing that Ev was saying. So there's some lessons that you do first, and they go right through. And I'm going to have that for you by probably the middle of next week, and we'll share it here on Autism Live. So I just want to put your mind at ease. And then I want to switch over to a question that came in yesterday. Here we are. So just technology, can Shannon walk, talk, and chew gum? And the answer is no. So we had somebody who wrote in yesterday and said, I was diagnosed with autism level 1, but the DDoS test didn't detect autism. Every online autism test that I should get tested for autism, which I did. Another autistic woman on YouTube said the same thing happened to her during the autism testing, and that she was diagnosed with autism level 1. Sometimes I worry that I was misdiagnosed because of the DDoS test. But when I look back on my childhood and look at my disabilities, I think I was correctly diagnosed. Can you discuss my concerns? They're wanting to know what you think about that.
Yeah, so what ends up happening is when you're high functioning autism, you're able to function in many parts of your life. And there's just a few areas that maybe are not functional. And then that's what qualifies you for the diagnosis of autism. The diagnosis of autism it's not a fine-tuned science, unfortunately. It's a list of symptoms. And if you meet so many under each area, then you fall into that area of, okay, you have, ASD, and here it's level 1, 2, or 3. And I've been doing this so long that there are some tests out there, where you have to have what we call inner observer agreement, where there's a group of us that sit around and we look at the same child, and then you look at the symptom sheet and you do a series of activities. And then at the end, you figure out, do they fall in the spectrum or not? And you have to have a high level of agreement if you're using it for research. And we've done this at CARD. And I always laugh because you never know what happens before you come into the session. I was at a place where one of my kids, and they told me that I couldn't talk because I knew all about this kid. And I was going to be in there just to see where this child would fall. And it was so incredible because the kid came in, and I had just seen the kid the day before in the clinic, and she had come in and fallen and done all these things. And when she walked in the clinic for this setting, she did the exact same thing. And then her responses were so rote for this test. I was just like, oh my goodness, she's not answering, she's just memorizing. But at the end of it, all these people had said, she's not on the spectrum. And I was like, she's fully on the spectrum. It's just that her responses were all, and the only reason I would have said that was because I knew her, and I knew so much of what she had said was rote and not true. She was just repeating what somebody had said. So there are ways to get around just the diagnosis. But if I were you, I wouldn't worry so much of whether you are on the spectrum or not. What I tell all the families that come through CARD is I actually don't really care what your, whether you have the diagnosis or not. I'm looking at your kid to see what symptoms. What are the areas of deficits? What are the areas that are non-functional in your child's life? Because that's what we really need to fix. If it's social communication, is it nonverbal communication? Is it, these repetitive or rigid behaviors that keep you from functioning in daily life and from learning? So any of these deficits or excesses that affect your learning ability in every environment, that's what I'm more concerned about. I want to see, where are you at? Are there times in your life when you become more rigid? Right now with all the COVID-19 stuff, there's a lot of people who I know who have suddenly become very, very rigid. And it's because it's their effort to control their environment when they really have very limited control because of what's happening right now. But the thing is, for those people that control the rigidity, if they can control it and they know when to turn it on and off, they're very functional. And I'm not going to worry about them because it's not affecting their work or, their family life and things like that. But if there's areas that are difficult all the time, such as not being able to read social cues or having really trouble integrating nonverbal information with what people are saying, those are deficit areas that, you can practice. But those are the areas that will make you fall on the autism spectrum. I always think so many of the kids or the people that come through, even the adults, the really high functioning adults, a lot of times, I had one adult come in for a diagnosis, and he We said, why are you here now? You're 40 years old, you're head of your department at work, and you're very successful, you're married, you have kids. And then he said, I'm here because my wife said that the cats know she's angry before I know she's angry. And it was like, okay, that's it. But I would look at you yourself, not so much in terms of diagnosis, but what areas do you need help with that will help you function better, that will probably make you a lot happier, or will help you just get along with people more, and focus on that more than actually, do I have this diagnosis? Was it right or was it wrong? And just be able to be more proactive in saying, okay, there's, if I know that, nonverbal cues are hard for me, maybe I can practice this. And there are a lot of different, I know that not everybody here is familiar with CARD, but like CARD has our skills curriculum, and there's a whole area about like facial expressions and, gestures and body language, and trying to understand how that works in, a setting as opposed to learning it in the isolated manner. So I hope that helps you.
Yeah, and I love that because as we've been talking today about good quality ABA, Ev is a perfect example of somebody who is a good ABA clinician, because her whole point is, I'm looking at you as an individual, and where do you need support? Where do you need help? Not as a one size fits all diagnosis. And so if P, then Q, you're a person. And we're all people, regardless of diagnosis or not diagnosis. We all have things that we're good at and things that we're not good at. And when we don't care about the thing we're not good about, then it doesn't matter. But if in some way it's impeding us, then we would all like an opportunity to get to be better, if it matters to us in the world that we're trying to move through. And it may not matter to me, like the person that you described, the 40-year-old who's like, well, for me it's working, but my wife says the cats notice when she's bad before I do. And as much as I don't really care about that, I care about my relationship with my wife. Mm-hmm. Therefore, what she cares about, I need to care about. So I'm here to get help and support for that. I think that's when I talked at the beginning of the show about it's important that all individuals with autism be treated with dignity, and that good ABA does that. That's what I was talking about. So Just wanted to point that out. Now we've got a mom, and we're over time. I'm so sorry. And I promised you were going to be done at 11. Can you answer one more question?
Okay.
Do you have time? Okay. Yeah. So this mom says, my son stims. But with all these changes and no schools, he's been stimming almost uncontrollably, even as he's falling asleep. And here is something very interesting. And in his sleep, what tips can I do? And another parent had asked the same question, but said, are there any learning apps that might help? So,
wow, that's a rough one, because I always say that if the kids are doing a certain behavior in their sleep, it's something else going on. It's not necessarily a self-stimulatory behavior, because their body, there's no conscious, right? Their body is just engaging in this behavior. And actually, that's when I actually refer them to a neurologist and just say, hey, if you've never had a 3-day EEG, this is the time to do it. Because you find out, is your child getting good sleep if they're moving or stimming or whatever it may be in their sleep? Like, there might be some other underlying concern. So go check it out. Be very, you might have trouble doing EEGs, but like if you have a good ABA provider, they can help shape the process, systematically desensitize to put, all those electrodes on and really help you through that process. I don't know if it is a self-stimulatory behavior, if they're doing it in their sleep, because I've had kids who have had certain behaviors, and usually when I've sent them on, something else is going on. And I'm not sure I would classify it as a self-stimulatory behavior, which is more automatic, and they're doing it because it feels good for some reason. But if he's doing it in his sleep, I'd think twice. I'd try the biomed.
Okay. And I'm going to let you go because I promised you'd be done at 11. I'm going to stick around for a couple of minutes to just give definition of self-stimulatory behavior and talk a little bit about that.
Sounds good.
But thank you so much for being here last night and today. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye. And that was the wonderful Evelyn Kung. She's the clinical director at CARD. So for those of you who are still watching, self-stimulatory behavior, which is we call it stimming, right? And that's short for self-stimulatory behavior, but that's kind of a misnomer too, because it implies that our kids are doing it to stimulate themselves. And in fact, sometimes the things that we call stimming, they're doing to calm themselves down, right? Which is the exact opposite of wanting to stimulate yourself. So the politically correct term for it is automatically reinforced behavior, which means that whatever the behavior is, the paycheck is on the inside. That, you know, the executive who clicks his pen is not doing it for you, and they're not doing it for an audience. They're doing it because it helps them to focus. It helps to, you know, quiet the other things in their mind so that they can focus on the task, and it helps them to think, right? We all engage in automatic reinforcing behavior across the board, absolutely, regardless of diagnosis, regardless of age. We all physically do things to help ourselves, to calm us, to help us to stay focused. All of us do these things. So we never want to say that across the board we want to stop it ever, right? But it's important that it not get in the way of everything else that we need to do. So, but I think the distinction that Evelyn was making is that we do it usually when we are awake because it is in some way helping us. So where it comes into question is the child that's doing it in their sleep. If they're still doing it in their sleep, is it actually something that is connected to their conscious mind? Now, I will say that I used to be a smoker. And I know, shocking, because I'm the last person who would smoking, and I'm one of those militant ex-smokers. I can't be in a room with people who are smoking. And it's been, I want to say to you with all insanity, it's been almost 30 years since I've had a cigarette, right? That's crazy. That's a long period of time. Still, when I am stressed in my sleep, sometimes I will dream about smoking and my fingers will be in this position when I wake up because I'm dreaming about smoking. So that might, you know, it could be that that's what your child is doing. But I think what Evelyn is saying, suggesting, oh, look, we have our neurologist back with us. We could actually, are you there, Dr. Golla? Because I have a question for you if you're there.
Yes, I'm here,
So
I'm listening.
So we had this question about a child who is engaging in a stim, but it's happening in their sleep. And the recommendation was to see a neurologist. Do you want to talk about this behavior?
Yes, definitely. I sent a text message as well. But,
oh, I see that
I'm
now.
Happy to chat. Yes, that is a concern. Self-stimulatory behaviors are something which occur when the child is awake. And any behaviors or any abnormal movements in sleep are not self-stimulatory behaviors associated with autism. There could be multiple things, maybe not seizures. Sometimes the most common thing of movements in sleep, unless this child is in light sleep. So maybe he's just closing his eyes and in light sleep, or he's not asleep actually, that could be self-stimulatory. But if he is in deep sleep and if he's shaking his hands or legs, it could be something as simple as restless legs in sleep, and sometimes iron deficiency can cause that. So you might want to see a regular doctor and make sure it's not just restless legs in sleep, or see a sleep doctor for that. It could be very well be seizures. And if there is abnormal movements in sleep, it would be a good idea to talk to a neurologist or see a neurologist and get an overnight video EEG, because children and adults with autism have a 15% higher risk for seizures compared to the general population, whereas it's 0 to 3%. So it's 15% in kids and adults affected with autism. So it's a good idea to look for seizures.
And in this crazy time, when the recommendation is to do an overnight EEG, is there any way to do that without having to go into a facility while we're trying to distance? Or is that just one of those things that you're going to have to do?
Absolutely. That's a very good question. So we have what is called as ambulatory video EEGs, where a child or an adult could get an EEG in the home setting. So you just get those little stickies on the top of the head. It's all covered up with the white thing. you have a little box at the side, which could be tied to your belt, or you could hold it on to a stand, and it could the recording keeps going on. And sometimes that's ideal even without all the crisis going on, because a child feels more comfortable in the home setting. It's his own bed, his room, his blanket, and all that. And at times we do it during regular times as well, an ambulatory video EEG for 48 hours, and you just turn it down in 2 days or 3 days, and we do have enough information, and we could look at that and make sure that there's no seizures.
Okay, so talking to a pediatric neurologist like Dr. Golla is going to be something important. We shared her number before, 844-754-8643. She is able to do telehealth right now in any of the 50 states. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's pretty amazing, and amazing that we had you on earlier and that this is the question that came up.
But I don't know how long it'll last. It's just now. So if you need to, make use of it. Absolutely.
That's absolutely right. Thank you for popping back on, because I was going to refer back to you and then there you were. It was like a wonderful gift. All right. So thank you so much for popping back with us.
Thank you.
And I want to thank all of you guys. We've gone way over time. And so we're going to end the live stream now, but I do want to talk to you about tomorrow's show. Tomorrow on the show, on Fridays, we typically do Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We're going to attempt to have Nancy here with me, and we will cover news. We have Leah Hirschfeld, who will be with us. She is from Research and Development for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, going to be talking about some recent research and why that might be of interest to us and in the current circumstances that we're in. And then we've got Vince Redmond with us. Vince is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and he's going to be talking with us about anxiety, something that we all are a little cozier with this week than we were a month ago, right? So we're going to talk about anxiety for you, anxiety for your child, how we cope in this COVID emergency. So I got to find what that other name is. The great attending. I don't know what we want to stop calling it the COVID emergency, because that is anxiety evoking. So I got to find out what the right hashtag is for us. But we will be back then, and you guys can be writing in your questions in the meantime. I appreciate you being here with us. We're going to stay with you. We're going to try to get our internet amped up a little bit so that it doesn't stick as much. But I want to thank you. I want to thank Traven for being our wonderful technician for this, because this is pushing the outer limits, right? And we really want to thank our guests, Dr. Golla and Evelyn Kung. We'll be back tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.